tonight.
All right, today is Monday, September 10th, 2018. I call this meeting to order. I need a motion to adjourn.
I'm sorry, we're going to do the roll call first.
Oh, yeah, let's roll call it. You're right.
Mr. Warren?
Present.
Mr. Sims?
Present.
Ms. Jacobs?
Present.
Mr. Henderson?
Present.
Mr. Lockett? Mr. Hill? All right, you also have present Sandy Edmonds and Anna Dow. You have a quorum.
All right, so we need a motion to amend the agenda to add reinstatement application of Edward Blakey.
I would like to move to amend the agenda.
And we need to roll call the vote as well.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll second.
All right, Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mr. Hill? Oh, sorry. Ms. Jacobs?
Yes.
Mr. Sims?
Yes.
Mr. Warren?
Yes.
All right, we will add him to right below tested applicants. I'll let you know when we're there. I think I wrote it on your agenda.
Thank you. Is there any public comment on today's agenda and hearings?
No public.
I need approval of the minutes from July 9th, 2018.
So moved.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion passes. Business is the Attorney General report, Attorney report, investigative report, Anna Dow. We're going to
request that be an executive session discussing specific investigative matters.
All right, well, that'll be executive session, LARS 4217A, LARS 4217A4, and or LARS 4217A10.
Make a motion to go into executive session.
And I second.
And let's see, Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Ms. Jacobs?
Yes.
Mr. Sims?
Yes.
Mr. Warren?
Yes.
All right, we are in executive session.
Off record.
Are we ready?
Yes.
Yep.
All right.
Move, we can come out of executive session.
I second.
Can you roll call it, Ms. Sands?
Yes, Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Ms. Jacobs?
Yes.
Mr. Lockett?
Yes.
Mr. Sims?
Yes.
Mr. Warren?
Yep.
All right, we are back in.
All right, the next item on the agenda is tested auctioneer applicants, and number one will be Mr. Jeffrey Garber. It is pending his test. He lives in Missouri, and is working on getting it scheduled.
You got the rest of his stuff? Yes, it does.
Yes, everything's in order.
All but the test. Move that we approve pending test. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Is there any further discussion about it? Anybody opposed? Motion passes. The next
Somebody who you say you
will be, we've got a reinstatement application of Edward Blakey, our amended agenda. It is pending all original documents, and it's being sent via FedEx.
Yes, they emailed everything Friday, and it's all supposed to arrive at the office today. But they had emailed and everything was complete, the bond, everything was there.
make a motion that we approve pending receipt of all the documents.
And I second.
Where's he from?
Give me a moment. Sarapra.
Where?
Did I say that? Let me say that.
Sarepta?
Sarepta, Louisiana.
Oh, was that a T?
Yeah, and that,
Okay, it's in Webster Parish. He was one of the first people licensed. His original license number was 481, and we started at number 100.
How long since he's been licensed?
It's been since 2002.
You mean he had the license since 2002 and he's coming in here 16 years later with a license?
Yes, sir. He was licensed from 1982 until 2002.
Jesus.
Yep. We got a motion?
Make motion to approve pending documents.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion passes. All right, the next item on the agenda is reciprocal auctioneer applicants. We have a Michael Stone, his temporary license issued on August the 8th of this year.
All paperwork in hand.
Yes, sir.
Move to grant him a license.
I second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion passes. Item number, second reciprocal auctioneer is Paul Lynn. His application is complete as well.
Move to he be granted a license.
And I second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion passes. Next one will be Andrew Hilly. His application is complete.
Move to he be granted a license.
And I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion passes. The next one is William Firestone. Now this is pending a letter of good standing from the state of Florida.
It's a Florida auctioneer.
Yes,
I
sir.
assume so, yeah.
I move that he be granted a license.
Pending the letter.
Yes.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposition? Motion passes. Number 4 will be auction business applicants. We have Stone Auctioneers and Appraisers. Their temporary license was issued on August the 8th of this year.
Make a motion to approve.
I second.
Any further discussion?
Where they from?
They are from Alabama, Pickensville, Alabama.
All those in favor? Anybody opposed? Motion passes. The next will be American Amusement Auctions. I believe Ms. Anna's got something to discuss.
Yeah, specifically with regard to this, Mr. Hohenstein had filed the application last time for the auction business, representing he was online only. Investigation, we determined not only was he not online only, he had done 2 auctions, live auctions, state of Louisiana, without a license. We advised him he needed to provide us with a live auctioneer if he is doing it. He advised, I sent that letter out on July, I think July 10th. Basically, he was supposed to provide us with an application for an actual individual auctioneer to call his auctions. We have, to my knowledge, I think Sandy will confirm this, we have not received that.
Nothing received this morning.
Yes, so the problem is that it's difficult to approve out-of-state auction business if they don't give us the name of the licensed auctioneer doing the business. He advised him he's going to do that when I talked to him last week. We have not received it. I will leave to the board whether they want to table this again or simply deny it and let him either appeal or file new paperwork. If you deny it, I would ask you to let us know if you receive any notification that he is doing another auction, most of them being in Monroe that we've seen so far. I believe both of them are in Monroe. Is that correct? Yes. So that we need to be, on top of these when that happens.
I move that we table it until we get additional information.
How long we take for this? This is what, 120 days this is going on?
And he was notified immediately after our last meeting.
Yeah, same day.
He did 2 auctions without a license?
Prior to us contacting him, yes.
Yes. And we didn't get a formal complaint, we just got a sort of call-in complaint saying, what do I need to do to make this man pay me, from, I think, the person who permitted him the location for his last auction.
So is there no repercussion for doing an auction without a license? They're just coming in and applying?
I stop him because I know about them. The problem is afterwards, if he gets licensed, normally what we will do is fine him accordingly, but get him a license so that we don't have a problem in the future.
But we license, normally you would license without any kind of fine or
No, we won't normally fine.
for doing an auction?
Yes.
I've never said that.
I move that we table it.
Table it, period, or?
Until you get additional information.
And completed application.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Do I have another motion or a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion about it? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposition? Motion passes. The next one will be Capital Recovery Group, LLC. Now, this is pending his bond.
Who is Capital Recovery Group?
It is owned by William Firestone that you approved pending his letter of good standing from Florida.
I move that they be accepted pending the receipt of the bond.
I'll second.
Is there any further discussion about this? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Motion passes. All right, the next item on the agenda is financials. We need to amend budget to cover the cover for Office of Risk Management insurance policy. Premium of $3,007 went up from last year's invoice, $437.
Now, I did contact them because I knew obviously you guys would want an explanation, as I was curious on that also. They said that there was a mistake in the prior year's calculations. So they will notice that our new this premium is more aligned with what we paid in 2017. There are pending claims that the state of Louisiana paid on our behalf that are, quote, still sitting. They stay on your record for so many years before they drop off. And they did send me that report, and those were 2 lawsuits from Mr. Burns and one from Miss Betty Story. So I was looking at the budget, and we did have a large amount added into our legal account. So I was just recommending that the board move $900, I believe is what I was thinking, $900 from attorney legal fees to our insurance general. Right now we have over $47,000 allocated for legal. So that's why I was thinking we could take it out of there.
Why only $900 when it's $3,000?
Because we already have budgeted $2,200.
I moved him, add 900 to the, in the budget by $900.
So that's legal to insurance.
Yes.
I'll second.
Is there any further discussion about this? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The motion passes.
I move we accept the financial report as written.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion passes. The next will be our NOLA update and Supreme Court ruling on internet sales tax. Sandy?
Yeah, so I have just a few key points that I wrote down from our NOLA meeting, informational type thing that we thought we would share with you guys, and then Anna will take care of the Supreme Court ruling on the sales tax issue. First, I wanted to let you know that there was a discussion that Tennessee, Pennsylvania, and Mississippi are all in the process of eliminating their farm or business licenses. Kentucky has changed their law that it says that if the item is located in Kentucky, the person selling it at auction must be licensed regardless of whether it's live or online. And actually, that if you read their law, it does not address online. It simply addresses the location of the item. So if you're selling it and it is in Kentucky. Tennessee, I thought this was interesting. Tennessee said that in order for them to pay out of their recovery fund, there must the complainant must sue and get a judgment before they can go back to the board. And because of that, the Tennessee board has never paid 1 cent out of their recovery fund. And then with the online auctions, obviously we all know that online auctions are just business in general is moving to online, and more than 54% of all shopping happens online. And then there was also a funny quote from a meeting room. I'll tell you that we're all not Jeff Henderson and everybody knows who you are. That was funny.
It wasn't Jeff.
There.
It wasn't me.
But those were the obviously there was more discussion, but those were the key points that I thought you guys would be interested in.
I do want to address, there was a special concentration at this year's convention, including a special educational item that to go over the decision in South Dakota versus Wayfair, Inc. I don't know if you've heard about this, but the United States Supreme Court, and I will point out to this was not a political decision. You had Justice Ginsburg and Justice Thomas agreeing on this, along with the majority of the court, and those are the two extremes from right to left. So the issue in that case was, should states be allowed to require out-of-state sellers to collect sales tax on the state's behalf and thus subject the out-of-state seller to the respective state's laws, rules, and police powers. This has been a situation where before you had to be present in the state. In other words, you had to have some sort of physical presence in the state to actually be required. So those of you who have ordered online from a Louisiana seller were paying or should have been paying sales tax on that. This particular case has to do with South Dakota decided that it doesn't matter. It's a matter of where the items are delivered that makes the difference, not who has the physical presence in the state. So if you are selling online and you are delivered, or even in theory, if someone comes to the state of Louisiana, buys something at auction, and you deliver it out of state, you can be required to actually collect sales tax on behalf of the state where the purchaser is located. With regard to auctions, then that's going to be a major issue. For example, I will tell you, as of March 2014, there are 9,998 tax jurisdictions in the United States. That includes local. In Louisiana, for example, we have 341 taxing jurisdictions. Cities can tax, parishes can tax, and the state taxes. In Texas, there are 1,515 taxing jurisdictions because every independent school district has its own tax collection. So you'll have to be able to do the following. As an auction professional, you have to identify from which tax jurisdiction each buyer is located. You would have to collect the appropriate sales tax, and then you would have to mail the appropriate sales tax back to the identified tax jurisdiction. As a result, and National Auctioneer Association advises that they have attorneys who are following this to see what happens. Basically, we don't know what each state's going to do. It is the actual responsibility of each state to enact laws to allow this to happen. If you're selling to someone at this point, someone in South Dakota, be aware that they're prepared for it, but there aren't that many taxing jurisdictions in the state of South Dakota. If you're selling to someone in Texas, that could be a huge, difficult problem. And I don't know what the status of any of these states are. NAA is supposed to be following that. So, by the way, there are only 3 taxing jurisdictions in the state of Mississippi, so as soon as you can figure out what that is, let me know. Now,
Well, they've already passed the law over there.
yeah, there all these states now are passing laws saying that if you deliver an item through an online sale or an out-of-state sale, then you're going to have to collect sales tax from the purchaser, or you're going to have to pay it. So be aware that's coming up. They're working through it. I don't know when everything will come into place, but we hope that the NAA will let y'all know. There are other associations also following it to let y'all know.
What's Louisiana's status in this?
I don't know that they've actually passed the individual laws necessary to start collecting, but that would not affect you because if you're a Louisiana auctioneer selling in Louisiana, whether it's online or in person, you have to collect sales tax.
Yeah, but we got a little problem with that, Anna. There's a code in the law. Like Jeff and me, we sell construction equipment. If we sell that piece of equipment online or over the telephone, the money is wired in here to pay us, and that piece of equipment is picked up by ICC Common Carrier and delivered out of this state. There's no sales tax on that piece of equipment.
If it's a title,
There ain't no sales tax, period, paragraph.
I don't know. Mississippi passes that law, says they are.
It's going to mean that you're going to have to
That's gonna
pay it.
change.
It hasn't been
That's going to
implemented
change.
yet.
That's what this suit's
It's going to be
about.
universal.
But,
So in other words,
I mean, a vehicle's not taxable except the state it's in anyhow where it's going to be licensed. But
That's
a
true.
piece of equipment carries no title, it carries a UCC.
Well, you know what? I wouldn't bank on that. I'd do a check on it.
yeah, that's the problem.
I mean, that's why I'm asking.
That's what I'm telling you. Is
It's going to be
that
universal.
It's going to be changed per state. There's no uniform law at this point that tells you that you have to do it each time this way for every state. Every state has a right to enact their own laws. So if they say you have to collect sales tax, if you're delivering it to somewhere else, then you're going to have to, collect sales tax from the purchaser.
Then what does he do when he has to pay sales tax in his own state?
That's what he's doing right now. If he's doing it right now, if he's already paying sales tax from the transfer of title, that's a different matter. But then we're getting into individual state laws. I don't know the answer to all those questions. Neither does anybody else as far as I know. The only group that I know that's doing this right now, I think is Amazon. I'm not sure they're always correct, but they are collecting now sales tax from you to buy, depending on where you live. So they have a software for it. There's going to be some major software sales, I think, for auctioneers. So keep in touch with and NAA. If you're a member, will notify you of changes and how that's going to work. They're actually still trying to fight it, but I'm not sure how successful they will be.
All right,
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is going to be bond amounts.
Sorry.
Oh, you skipped online auction.
Number 7.
Okay, online auctions.
Darlene's got something on that, hasn't you?
Well, I mean, I think that they're becoming more and more prevalent, and I think that we need to go ahead and establish laws for the state of Louisiana. Terrence has volunteered to help me work on those. We don't have anything right now, but I'll try to have something for the December meeting. I'll get with Terrence.
Let me ask you a question now. You were here when this happened. This happened right before I got on the board. What is this going to happen with what is it going to do if we try to get in this fray for what eBay already got passed down here before about 7 or 8 years ago?
Pennsylvania passed a law 2 years ago.
Right.
Definitely targeting eBay and the way they do things, exempting on some things, but making sure that if you take things for consignments covered, eBay has done nothing. That was the report.
Some places like Gilmore Auctions, they're already doing internet auctions right now. And this stuff is really not being regulated. I've gotten at least 2 calls on an auction that they did. It doesn't affect everybody because not everybody goes and does the interstate, whether online auctions. I do because we sell real estate and land, but the average person doesn't. So, but
The
I think
reason
we-
I'm asking, eBay came in here and they spent $30,000 and had a reception the night before committee.
Well, I'm not gonna
meeting.
have a
Knocked us-
reception.
Knocked us out of the box.
Really?
So I
You
mean,
know, when
I'm
Terrence
wondering
and I-
whether it's,
Well, when Terrence and I work on something that we can give to you all, what I would like to do, I'm a member of the Louisiana Auctioneers Association. I think everybody here, you're not a member of it? Well, I know Mr. Sims is, right? Yeah. Are you a member, Jeff? Yeah, I mean, I'd like to have some input from them. I think we should.
Which, keep in mind that, like I pointed out, is that Kentucky changed theirs, and there's no mention of live or online, but it just simply says that if you're selling an item at auction and the item is located in Kentucky, licensure is required.
I mean, I'm more or less looking at that because I frankly think, as I said, on one that Gilmore had, I received 2 telephone calls on it. And
If I may address it too, this decision from the United States Supreme Court regarding the sales tax may limit some people wanting to sell online basically because of the problems with collecting sales tax until this all gets straightened out. Real estate obviously is not subject
no,
to that.
right, and then that affects me. I'm really not into selling chickens or anything like that. Well, I mean, I'm not adverse to
oh,
that.
we have good chicken
Nobody
feed.
actually brings me a horde of chickens to sell. But I'm going to try to get with Terrence, and we're going to try to come up with something.
Okay.
Well, now, while we're on this online business, what about these online auction schools? What are we going to do about that?
I'm against online.
I mean, everybody I've talked to is against it.
I mean,
So-
I'm against it, but that's not on the agenda. And I've told you why I'm against it, because I think it creates fraud. Where people will say, oh yeah, I went and I watched this program and I watched that program, and they really did, and they come in, they may ace an exam, but they don't know all the rules and regulations. I'm against it.
All right. Anything else on online auctions? Now we can move to bond amounts and discussion of the potential increase of them.
Well, I had talked with Mr. Sims not too long ago. For me, I'm not adverse to a bond increase because of what we sell, but for the guy who is maybe retired, semi-retired or retired and doesn't do auctions frequently, it might be a hardship for them.
I can't buy that. I mean, everybody I've talked to says they want everybody in the same boat, and I'm going to move right now and make a motion that we increase the bond amount in the state of Louisiana to a minimum of $20,000. And that's down from about the vast majority want 30 to 50. But I'm going to say $20,000.
Well, it's 10,000 now, and I think that's high. Mississippi is 10,000.
You do have in your packets, I'm sorry, just if you want to be able to take a look, you do have in your packets a chart that shows you reciprocal, state bond, and recovery fund amounts.
We do
So
have
if you want to see what each state has, it looks like this, Darlene.
Do we have to go to
See, yeah, let me look.
legislature
Terrence is
now?
showing me
Yeah, it's
this.
got to go next year.
So we can't
Okay.
change it. We've
So
got
you can
No,
see that
it's
the
got to
states
go
that
pending
do
Yeah, well, in
have-
Florida, 100,000, but look what they auction.
That's their recovery fund. If you look at the bond column, there's only one state that has a higher bond than Louisiana, and it's Ohio, and they have a $25,000 bond. Everybody else is at $10,000 except Pennsylvania, who has a $5,000 bond.
Well, let me rephrase this. I move that we increase the bond amount in the state of Louisiana from $10,000 to $20,000 pending approval of the 2019 state legislative session and the law to take effect in December 31, 12:01 a.m., 2020.
But I would like it reduced to 15,000, pending approval.
I mean,
20,000 is...
It's got a motion. You need to second it.
I'll second Jim's motion.
Okay, now we're going to have some discussion on it? Yeah,
Okay.
okay. Well, I mean, I still think it's high for the average person that does auctions here. From what I've seen, most people just do an occasional auction. I would certainly not be adverse to paying a higher bond, but for some people, that's going to be a hardship, particularly for minority participants. And I think it should be $15,000. It should be increased, but I don't think any more than $15,000, because it's a hardship.
What is $50 a year?
Well, it comes to 200, it's 1%, so it's $200 a year.
I mean, if you
And
were
15 what would 15% be?
150.
Well, I'm still for the 15, and I understand why it should be increased. Jeff, you-
With the issues that we've had recently, $20,000 doesn't go very far.
Let's face reality about this, too. You can't get enough bond amount to cover the losses that we've had in this, come through here. You just can't get it. The only ones that's going to get it are the bankruptcy courts and the federal courts, where you got a separate bond that's required. Even the state of Louisiana didn't even require Jacob Brown, when all that mess came up, to put up an additional bond for what he was selling. And they got burned.
May I
Yes, come on.
interject something quick here? The problem you have, and I know y'all have discussed making incremental fund amount increases based on the amount of sales. That's going to be hard to enforce, and I understand that. You're covering small operators all the way up to multi-million-dollar auctions. $10,000 or $20,000 or $15,000 doesn't make a bit of difference to a multi-million-dollar auction. My suggestion has always been that we require proof of errors and omissions insurance. Bonds are holdover from the 1700s as far as auctioneers are concerned, and they were incorporated in our laws early on. I don't know that bonds are ever going to solve our problem. I think maybe we should start looking at insurance as the substitute. And I don't know. I'm assuming that people run multi-million-dollar auctions.
We have our own insurance.
And then I met Jacob Brown. So, and there's another auctioneer from the past who had the same problem, who did not have adequate coverage, and ended up us in getting involved in payments. So, you need, I'm not saying what to do or how to do it, but you need to consider that, for a lot of these losses, 10 is never going to be enough. And right now, most of the claims I'm getting are over 10.
They're over 20.
They're over 20.
Wasn't there a recovery fund at one time?
Yes, there was a recovery fund, but it was the same
How did that-
amount. Basically,
Only
yeah,
There was a limit.
10.
Give me your
You just didn't have to buy the bond. You paid money up front
What's your
as a
contact?
licensee.
I want to contact
It
you.
went into this fund, and then the board would decide who get paid and how much. Now, as I told Mr. Sims earlier, I was not involved in the recovery fund. That came in the 90s and left in the 90s, at the end of the 90s when I first got
Why'd
it.
it go away?
The board did not like it. They wanted it to go back to a bond.
From what I was told, it went broke on one auction.
No, it didn't. It was Martin Goldberg, and there was a maximum amount that could be paid.
So that means put a maximum of 3.
Yeah. Well, they hit that was a fine art auction.
Let me say this. Jeff and I have had some discussion about this recovery fund. I'm not opposed to a recovery fund. I'm not. I want everybody to understand that now. What concerns me is, how do you administer it? I think if the board votes to do a recovery fund, we either gonna have, do we have a CPA firm, Sandy, that does our books, or we just,
We have a bookkeeper that quarterly does bank reconciliation and paying of payroll taxes, and annually we do have a CPA that does an annual report that the legislators require.
well, if we do this recovery fund or look at it, I suggest that we get a CPA involved in it if we have a claim, and set a maximum amount per auctioneer that this will pay. I mean,
That's almost like saying, let's have the bond increase. It's almost the same thing.
I'm saying
I
do
mean, I
both.
think because it affects so many people.
I'm saying do
I think
both.
everybody should have input on it. I think the Louisiana Association of Auctioneers should have input on it. I mean,
They've had their
the
input.
legislature should have input on it. I mean,
The LAA had their input.
I don't want to see someone not be able to be an auctioneer because they can't afford a bond.
Or to practice illegally
Right.
without a license.
Exactly. I don't want to see that happen.
I mean, somewhere, and I'm not disagreeing with you, somebody gave me a chance when I got started too. But that was 1974. Things are different, Anna.
Things are still hard for people. You got people
Anna,
watching
you gotta look
pictures.
at
We
this.
just talked about that.
How much larceny
Yeah.
have you got? How much larceny do you read about in the paper every day?
I read it, living in
How
New
much
Orleans, I
larceny
see a
do
lot.
you
I
read
don't
a lot
read
in the
about it, but I
paper
see a
about?
lot of it. I mean, but the big thing is, but we're an administrative agency, and I think we've got to consider everybody that's a member of this agency, not just ourselves. It doesn't matter to me if the bond is $100,000, because I feel like I'll make it up.
If you get
I have a
above
company.
$20,000.
And some of us on that board, that may be true, but for someone else that has their bond doubled, it may be a hardship for them. If they only do one or two auctions
That's
a
not my problem,
year.
Anna. Then they need to make a decision. They either need to get in or out of the auction business, because one auction pays for a bond. I don't want to hear that argument.
But then you're going to a closed shop, which is against the law.
No, it's not.
You're limiting
No, it's
the
not.
people that can come in there. I mean, I don't know.
Other states have requirements from the board to the bonding companies, and the bonding companies do the soul searching for the board and keeps it clean. I've already been told that by 2 bonding companies. They do it every day. If we want to set the criteria for a licensed auctioneer in this state to get a bond, we set it and give it to the bonding company and they police it. We don't. But yes, I'm going to say right now, if we go to $20,000, 2% of the auctioneers in this state will not be able to get a bond. Everybody else can.
I don't think it's going to affect,
So we can bring
I
it
don't think
to,
it will affect any,
I don't, really and truly, I don't think it'll have any effect on it. If you want to know the truth from Holt and International Sureties, and they write more bonds than anybody in this state, I don't think it's going to have an effect either way. They're not going to enforce it. If we don't put any criteria with it, it'll be just like it is now. I'm not saying I don't agree with you, Darlene. I do to a point. But I know what's going on nationwide, and there's larceny going on in every one of these states. It ain't just here. And a lot of it here is just pure negligence.
I can only vote for a $15,000
What?
bond.
And then
Increase
it's
it to
$15,000.
So you're increasing $50 a year by doing that.
Huh?
It's
Yeah.
a $50 increase
I'd vote for that,
versus
pending what the
100.
legislature says and
You're
pending.
saving $50 a
Right.
year.
I understand, but that might be a lot for someone.
How do you feel if we put a recovery fund with it? And
They
let-
have a recovery fund.
we got
with the Louisiana State-
$300,000.
Well, we have a recovery fund with several $millions in it, as Anna can tell you, at the Louisiana State Bar Association. And the way that that's funded is lawyers like me, who are personal injury lawyers, have to deposit all of our funds in what they call a client escrow account. And the Bar Association gets the interest from that money, which in my case is very considerable. And that goes out to pay claims where other lawyers have stolen money from clients. Do I think it's fair? No. Do I participate in it? Yes, because I have to. It's the nature of my business.
Well, I'm not
But
talking about charging anybody
It
a
costs me a
fee.
lot of money every year, and if you don't believe me, I can show you my books and you'll see how much.
I know where you're coming from. I know exactly where you're coming from. I'm curious. Sandy, what's our bank balance?
That's something you're going to have to contend with when you get the license.
All the things, all the money. I said all the money that has to be paid out.
Well, it's a lot.
I don't know what the
I
bank balance
can
is.
show you on the bar chart. It's plenty.
And we're essentially discussing $50 difference here.
I think, Mr. Chairman, I think you have enough argument to call for a
You
vote.
want to amend it? Amend it.
Well, I'd like to amend it to go to $15,000 pending legislative approval.
He would have to amend his motion.
Okay? Well, if you want to, Jim. I know you're against it, so.
I'll go along with it.
Okay. I mean, I
To get
guess.
it started, I'll go along with it.
Okay.
We can always go back and raise it. We can do something in the law.
All right.
The legislature has the
justify it.
final say.
Right.
Right.
The
they have the final
legislature's
say.
got to approve it, but we'll put something in the legislation. If you go along with
$15,000 you can easily
later
get
down
that
the road, it
approved.
can
You can
be
get it approved.
increased without going back to the legislature. Every time we have to turn around Louisiana to do something.
Okay, so if Jim amends the motion, then we need somebody to second the amendment, right?
That's correct. person actually,
Jeff?
Yeah, I'll second the amendment.
Okay, thank you. So the motion is to increase the bond for the state of Louisiana from $10,000 to $15,000 pending approval of the 2019 legislative session, effective, and I have to go back and listen unless you can tell me, Mr. Sims, what date did you say was effective?
January 1st, 2020 would be the earliest it can go in effect. Because all the bonds be issued for next year, being by the end of December.
Okay, effective January 1st, 2020. We have a motion and a second.
Is there any further discussion about it? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion passes. Next,
hearing
we got
document.
a hearing docket.
We'll need to get our board set up and
Yep.
do some rearranging.
So we can pause recording, Mike,
We're going to take a short pause.
off the record.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Alex Reinboth. I'm Assistant Attorney General. I'll be acting as hearing officer during these hearings for the Auctioneers Board. I'll be directing the proceedings and may be called on to make some evidentiary rulings and procedural rulings, but all of the substantive disciplinary decisions are going to be made by the board today. Ms. Dow, if you could call the first case.
Yes, this is the matter of Louisiana Auctioneers Licensing Board versus Jacob Brown, license number 1421, docket number 18-009. This is a matter against Mr. Brown solely for the purpose of filing on the bond. As you know, Mr. Brown no longer has his auction license. His auction business has been shut down, and basically at this point, we are simply trying to establish what we do with his $10,000 bond, which is payable to the board, so the board has to make that decision. I would ask that Mr. James, who is the complainant in this matter, and Mr. Phillips, the investigator, be sworn.
Could you just raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
I would offer to introduce into evidence the notice of noncompliance forwarded to Mr. Brown with regard to the complaint filed by Mr. James as Board 1,
Should be admitted.
showing that certified mail was sent and returned. We also have the original complaint filed against Mr. Brown. At this time, we do not have a return, but Mr. Phillips will testify as to the whereabouts or lack of whereabouts of Mr. Brown. Mr. Phillips, are you aware of the situation with regard to Mr. Brown?
Yes, I am.
Okay. With specificity, exactly, do you know where Mr. Brown is?
I do not know physically where he is.
Is he at his registered address with the board?
No, he is not.
Okay, and we do not know where he is.
We do not.
Are there arrest warrants out for his arrest?
There is an active warrant out now that was issued early August.
Has he been arrested on any other ones?
He has been arrested on the original 2 warrants. This warrant is still active.
And do we know the address he gave for bonding out of his warrants?
I do not have the file with me. I'm not sure which address he
Okay,
is.
if I suggested to you that it's the same address we have for him,
Yes,
that would be correct.
I believe so.
Even though we are showing that he's not accepted any mail from this board since these proceedings started earlier this year, as shown by the record before, and we would ask that we be allowed to go forward with this complaint.
I think just for the heck of it, we can call for Mr. Brown outside if the deputy wouldn't mind, just in the off chance that he's here today.
Mr. Deputy. I'm sorry, you need to call for Mr. Brown to see if he's here.
been kind of in the hallway and in the lobby.
No responses? All right. Yes, ma'am.
Therefore, I would ask you to go forward on this particular hearing, complaint file set for today. A copy of which is in everybody's packets, so that we can proceed on this. Mr. James does have his attorney here with him, Mr. Volker, and I would ask him to go forward. That would be Board 2.
Board 2.
I'm sorry. We ask that be admitted as Board 2.
You may proceed, Counsel.
Thank you. My name is Richard Volker. I'm an attorney in Covington, Louisiana, here representing Mr. Fred James today. Just by way of background, I did file a complaint with the board and attach several documents to that evidencing the transaction between Mr. Brown and Jacob and Mr. Fred James, my client. Basically, on November 25th of 2017, a car belonging to Mr. James was sold at auction. Mr. James received a auction settlement statement indicating that a 2008 Toyota Avalon passenger car, VIN number 4T1BK36B1A U310414, 2008 Toyota Avalon was sold at Brown's Auction Auto in Eunice, Louisiana. The bid price was $6,400. The original agreement was for Mr. Brown to charge a $100 flat fee consignment fee to Mr. James. Mr. James received that settlement statement sometime after we made demand. Part of what is in the package is a series of emails from our office to Mr. Brown making demand for the payment. While the original check for $6,300 was en route, Brown's Auto Auction issued another settlement statement, and that was dated again, indicating the sale of November 25th, a sale of $6,400, and then Mr. Brown altered the agreement and took a $640 consignment fee and issued a second check in the amount of $5,760. Mr. James received that check, deposited it, and it was returned NSF by the bank that the check was written on. I have filed suit in St. Landry Parish against Brown's Auto Auction seeking to have whatever my client is entitled to, seeking a judgment for payment of the NSF check, or in the alternative, the $6,300 that was the initial agreement. By way of support of the prior testimony, I attempted service on Mr. Brown through the registered address for agent for service process, who is Jacob Butson Brown, 1121 Camellia Boulevard, Unit 203, Lafayette, Louisiana. That service has been returned as no one would accept service there. I'm not sure if the premises was closed or not. I have effected service on the entity through the Secretary of State. I have discussed with Ms. Dow the realities of the situation with Mr. Brown, and I understand where we are with regard to excess claims against Mr. Brown beyond the $10,000 bond that was posted. Despite that, I did advise my client to appear today. I am here today to basically support the cause of the board in taking whatever actions is necessary with regard to Mr. Brown and consider whatever relief may be entitled to Mr. James through this board and seizure of the bond and distribution of it. I asked Mr. James to be here to answer any questions. I think that the board is well aware of what's going on. Are there any questions or any particular?
Let me just ask the technical question.
Sure.
You have made demand, Mr. James, or through your attorney, on Mr. Brown to pay the NSF check?
Yes, we have.
Okay. And has that been made good?
No, ma'am.
And have you had any correspondence with him other than what's in the original complaint with regard to getting this check paid?
No, ma'am.
Does the board have any questions?
I have no further questions.
Ms. Dow, do you have anything else?
I don't believe it unless you have, I think the request is that you wish to be allowed to file the bond, but you understand the bond is for $10,000 only and that there are other consigners who have also been allowed to sign.
Completely understand the status of that. I do, want to submit the claim and for the board's consideration and whatever relief may be possible.
Absolutely.
And with that, I submit my documents that were attached to my complaint as evidence in support of the claim. And if there are no other questions or any other issues, I would submit the case for consideration by the board.
I've got one question pertaining to the original agreement of charging $100 and then it got changed to 10%. Was that a verbal agreement or was there something in writing?
It was verbal.
Verbal, just between you and Mr. Brown for a $100 flat rate fee?
Yeah.
We need a motion to go into executive session.
I'd like to make a motion going into executive session.
I'll second.
And I'll roll call that. Yes?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Ms. Jacobs?
Yes.
Mr. Lockett?
Yes.
Mr. Sims?
Yes.
Mr. Warren?
Yep.
All right, we are in executive session. Have Peter ready.
I'm ready.
Okay.
We're back on the record.
I'd like to make a motion that we come out of executive session.
I second it.
Roll call, please.
Yes, Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Ms. Jacobs?
Yes.
Mr. Lockett?
Yes.
Mr. Sims?
Yes.
Mr. Warren?
Yes.
All right.
All right. Do we have a motion to find Mr. Brown guilty of violation as laid out in the complaint?
I would like to make a motion that Mr. Brown be found guilty of the violations as alleged by Mr. Fred James in his complaint.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Does
You
that
guys
need to be
have to
rolled?
officially address the bond.
Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion that Mr. Fred James be allowed to go against the bond for Mr.
We
Brown.
need a motion to file a claim against the bond of Jacob Brown.
Right, I would
on
like to make
behalf
that
of Mr.
motion.
Fred Jones.
I'll
Yes.
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We need to be roll call
Yeah,
this.
should we roll call that one? Sure.
Okay, roll call then. Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Ms. Jacobs?
Yes.
Mr. Lockett?
Yes.
Mr. Sims?
Yes.
Mr. Warren?
Yes.
All right, it's unanimous.
Thank you.
We don't have to do nothing else on license or anything, do
No,
we?
licenses are suspended.
So it's gone for both.
Good luck, Mr. James.
Thank you. My appreciation to
Yes, sir.
all members of the board. Thank you.
Wish you guys the best.
Thanks.
There'll be a judgment issued, findings of fact and findings of law based on the hearing today, and you'll get a copy of it.
Thank you. And if I may get some information from Mr. Phillips at some point in time regarding the arrest warrants.
Yeah,
I
sure.
will call, can I coordinate through?
Yeah, send me an email, I'll send you some contact.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the help.
Thank you for coming,
Have a
Mr.
great day.
James.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Dow will be our next case.
I would call the matter of 17-003, Rex Lazion, license number 1549. You have the complaint in the file with regards to this matter. I'll offer introducing the evidence. Basically, the notice of non-compliance was filed, and a copy of the complaint was also filed and served on Mr. Lazion, and he is present today. I would ask that Mr. Phillips and Mr. Lazion be
You raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
So the revised notice of hearing served, as well as the notice of non-compliance was required by law. We're done. I'm going to introduce this as, I'm going to do this one as global. Board Exhibit A. Now, if I may address some of the issues here. This matter was filed, complaint was by Mr. Larry Longstreet. You'll see in the complaint, basically, the allegation was that Mr. Lazion violated the contract in selling a set of tires for less than the reserve. After we notified Mr. Lazion of the issue, he endeavored to resolve this issue directly with Mr. Longstreet. You will see that attached, or should be attached to your complaint in the file. The complaint filed basically said that he said that tires and rims paid $6,000, total wrecks $2,000 or no sale. Called him 6 times, no answer. Only paid $725 per tire, less 10% selling fees. That is, and he attached his, Mr. Longstreet did, his allegation of the amount he was paid, as well as a listing of the, and you'll see that attached as part of the complaint I just filed in the record. After that was done, after he was notified, basically, Mr. Lazion endeavored. I have his answer here. Mr. Lazion, do you wish me to file your answer that you provide to us, including your settlement with Mr. Longstreet?
Yes, please.
I would ask you, this is the letter you sent that you signed off on?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. I would offer to introduce this into the record as Board 2. Received from Mr. Lazion. I'm handing that out at this point. This is dated February 28, 2018. Please note that he shows that that he settled this out. I think the date was 12/19/2017. And he shows the checks that were paid to him and an explanation of everything there. Now, I did not receive this answer until after the matter was settled. You will see it is dated February 28, 2018. It was not filed at the time of the first notice, which I just placed in the record in 2017. So my argument is today that, I want to explain that first of all, Mr. Longstreet has settled with him. He has resolved his complaint with regard to payment of money, which is, by the way, so you know, the first obligation I feel as handling this case. However, because this was a serious violation and that there have been other issues over the last 10 years with Mr. Lazion, I wanted to review this directly to make sure there are no issues with regard to if there should be any further payment of fine or other disciplinary matter that the board wishes to do. We did offer Mr. Lazion settlement of paying a fine, and also 6 months of probation. But he did reject stipulation, which took here today to answer any questions the board may have.
Well, I have a question. Are we open
Yes.
for questions, yes? Mr. Lacion, is it correct that there was a reserve placed on the tires in the amount of $2,000?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And you said that when the tires were sold, that the ringman went up to the complainant and said, "We have a bid for $1,450. Will you accept it?" Is that correct?
Yes.
Did you get that? Did you get it in writing that he was accepting the $1,450 as an alternative bid to the reserve that was set in the amount of $2,000?
No,
You did not. So as we sit here today, it's actually your word against his. Is that right?
That's right.
So, but you're telling us now that you have, in fact, made a settlement with Mr. Longstreet. Is that correct? Longstreet.
Yes, ma'am.
And how long did it take for you to make that settlement?
It took several months. Let's see. You want me to just start from the front? Can I start? It'd take me about 4 minutes.
Well, I'd like to know why it took several months.
Mr. Longstreth drove a big truck cross country, and every time I would call him, he'd be in Oregon or in Texas or in Houston, and I'd say, "We need to get this settled."
But did he tell you that he really wanted the $2,000 for which the reserve was initially set?
Yes, we have
He
it.
did tell you that. So there's been a difference of opinion between what the reserve was and what you all got on bid and what he actually received in settlement. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I have it in writing here. I was there that day. This is my handwriting. When I checked him in, he gave me reserves on 2 items.
Well, I have that here. I don't really need that. You've answered my question.
Okay.
I think you answered it yes to most of the questions. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm not trying to trap you. I'm just trying to get to the truth here.
Yes.
Okay. How long have you been an auctioneer?
17 years.
So you do know that if a reserve is placed on merchandise in an auction, that in order for you to accept a countervailing bid, you should have that reserve reset for the amount that you get, that you want the claimant to accept. Is that correct?
Yes, he was.
And that should be in writing. You know that.
He was present at the auction.
But you know it should be in writing, right?
Yes, I guess we could come up to him and get a contract right before.
Right, because if it was in writing and you had gotten him to say, "Yeah, I will accept that particular bid," we wouldn't be here today.
That's right, but some people, if they want 2,000, they don't want to take $1 less, and some of them that means they'll actually take 1,000 that minute we go to sell.
But in order to protect you as an auctioneer, you know you got to get that in writing, right? Because you don't like to have to come before the board.
That's right.
Right.
And I didn't want to come here today. To be honest, we defrauding the public, $500. And I thought about it, and from day one, I called Miss Sandy and was advised, "So what do you think I need to do?" And she said, "Well, it's better to just confirm with him and pay him, and don't have to do none of this."
But you didn't pay him the $2,000. You paid him a reduced amount.
We paid him. What exactly happened was he had all of his merchandise. He had a set of tires right before them, which is like $349, and I didn't even get a bid on them. I couldn't get $10 or $20 for them. So I put the next lot with them together, which would have been the lot he had reserve on, and them 2 lots together brought $1,450.
And that's what he was paid.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
May I ask a question? I don't understand then why Mr. Longstreet filed a complaint against you if he authorized the lower reserve.
Yeah, I don't know. He even had, he had a reserve on a trailer 2 minutes later that we sold and we did not sell. I think he left there that day thinking, because I called him after we got this letter. I called him that day, that next. I said, "Why did you put this complaint?" Well, he said, "I come by the shop and you wasn't there and I couldn't get a hold of you." But this is, Mr. Larry he's been coming to our sales for 7, 8, 9 years. I mean, I'll go to his house, drink coffee, he'd call before, and I'd go and look at his equipment, you know. Well, I pulled out copies here, which I, you know, may not need to see none of that, but this is from 2014 when we tried to sell him out. He was going to retire. He had Peterbilt trucks, and we sold one old dump truck. Majority of it, we didn't get it sold that day. But he has never not been there at the sale, you know, like he fill out his, well, I want $10,000 and not be there. He's been standing right there with us. He's bought and sold equipment with us for 7 or 8 years.
Well, let me say this. It's a little confusing because when we contacted Mr. Longstreet, he insisted that you sold an item for less than reserve for which he did not give consent. After all this was done and said, you know, I don't understand. Now you're saying that he was standing there and consented to it, but then immediately called you thereafter.
This is
said, I did, you know, that he wanted the money. So there's a, you know, a disconnect. I didn't call Mr. Longstreet here today because he's right about the fact that Mr. Longstreet actually travels a lot, which is one of the reasons we had to postpone this a number of times. And since he actually settled it and paid the money, Mr. Longstreet obviously was satisfied with.
Well, I don't know that he was satisfied. He maybe wanted to get it over because he is a long-distance operator. The question is, as an auctioneer, what should you do? What is the proper procedure? And I think you've already answered my question. If you have a reserve and you want to go below the reserve, you should, to protect yourself as an auctioneer, get it in writing, not something oral.
Let me ask one question. If you're selling at a sale and they want $2,000 and he's standing there and he'll take $1,400, and are we supposed to walk out there to him and get him to write it in?
To protect yourself, I would.
And then walk over there to the buyer and say, okay.
Well, you don't want to be here again, right?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so you want to get it in writing next time, right?
But it's just the auction's so fast.
Well, I know, but you got to protect yourself.
Yes,
you have a reserve there. That's in writing. He's telling you, I want this.
Yes.
All right, and if you had gotten it in writing, we wouldn't be here. You would have been protected. Yeah. An auctioneer has to protect himself, and that's your obligation to protect yourself, not the seller.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Lassian,
Yes, sir.
you handwrite clerk tickets
Yes, sir.
on site during the auction?
Yes, sir.
If he had agreed to lift that, all you had done was wrote on that clerk ticket, reserve lifted, and let him put his initials on it or sign it, none of us would be here today.
I understand that. I've never did that.
I understand. I know how it
It
is.
just is fast-paced, and
I know. I'm very well aware.
some of them, everybody's different. Some of them, when they give you a price, they don't want 1 penny less. But that morning, his daughter needs money, and he wants to take half of that. I don't know what he's got going on.
But you have to protect yourself, though.
Yes, ma'am.
That's the issue.
My other question is, how long did it take to clear this up? A couple of months?
Yes, sir. What I did, when we got the letters, and then in December, we called him on September the 6th. And he said, yes, I can come to you today. You know, we'd come out with agreement, and he'd come up with $1,080. I said, okay. On September the 6th, he said, I'm going to come down there. You know, Miss Sandy advised me not to just mail him a check. Don't just mail him a check, and it's done. You need to type you up a letter and get him to sign it and date it, saying that he's satisfied with his. So on September the 6th of 17, we called him, and then Larry calls back, yeah, I'm going to come to your office today. So Ashley, my wife, she types this up, and then he calls us back an hour or two later, and he didn't come. So we had his check wrote out. Here's a copy of the check. Well, I wrote the check back in the next day we got the letter. I wrote the check in July. So in September, he didn't come see us, so I said, well, I'm not going to go to his house. He was off working, and So in December, I just made up my mind. I said, we need to go get this straight. So I called him. I said, you at home? He said, yeah, I'm at home. I drove to his house. And I gave him that check and had him sign this. And then by that time, he didn't want me to hold out no commission. He said, well, I think I need to get the whole amount. So I went back out there to my truck and wrote him another check for $200 and had him sign this. And
Where are those other 2 checks at?
there's a copy here.
I believe there's some checks attached to it.
I got one for the 1080.
What this is 1,080, and then the one for $200 is actually my stub, because I didn't have duplicate. I just went out there to the truck and wrote him $200 and handed it to him. My honest opinion.
You spent 2 months chasing him.
I spent 2 or 3 months chasing him, and to be honest, I'll tell you what, and I think they're getting this changed now. Auction Flex, when you put 2 items together, or if you put 4 items together, it averages it. When he gets this, this is a copy of his original, his settlement. If you see lot 349 is $725. Lot 350 is $725. So when he got his settlement, 2 weeks later, he thinks his tires brought $725, which he was standing at the auction. But this first set of tires, I couldn't get $10 for them, or $20. So the bottom line is, we give him $725 for a set of tires that couldn't even get a bid on, and then we give him $2,000 for a set of tires that he wanted to reserve on. Was actually what we paid him.
So you actually paid him a lot more than...
We paid him $725 plus $1,450 plus $1,380. How much is that? We paid him $1,450 plus maybe $1,280. But
1,900, I believe.
yeah, it's 12. It is.
And let me say this, I believe Mr. Lassiani received the first notice of the complaint in July of 2017.
Yes, ma'am.
He wrote the check that day. You did not actually pay him until December of 2017, which is 6 months.
Yes, ma'am.
So it wasn't a couple of months, it was 6 months.
Yeah, that's
Now,
right.
I understand you said you had problems locating, and I understand that, but as I understand it, Mr. Longstreet was in town and was available during that period of time. It's just a matter of you getting together with him. So I want to point out to the board that there was more than just a couple of months involved here.
Well, it was September to December, wasn't it?
No, it was July to December.
The first was July, yes, when we first started working on it.
And the sale was in February.
And I guess if I called him every week, I could have drove to his house a long time before this.
Well,
But
he's paid and everybody's happy now. He's here because of the probation period?
Well, no, sir. The question is, we never resolved or had a decision from this board with regard to the outcome of the complaint, since it did violate what we have as rules.
I'd like to go to executive session to discuss this.
If Mr. Lassian, do you have anything else that you want to present to the board? Any other evidence or any other testimony?
Yeah, I'd like to say one more minute. And some of you I know, and some of you I don't. We took our time today to come here, but I read the $500 wasn't no defrauding the public. I'm never in my life. We go overboard we lose money to make the customer happy. This is my wife, Ashley. 19 years, 3 children, and to be honest, 7, 8 years ago, I woke up one morning, I said, we're going to say a prayer before every auction. It don't matter if we're selling junk or if we're selling whatever. That's what we do. Now, the public sometimes defrauds us. We have one, it's usually somebody just about every sale, and it's a different customer, that comes there and he raises his hand, and he goes out there and looks at his item, he don't like it, he walks out the gate. We pay the consignor, and then we resell it next time or something. But I guess what I'm getting at, in my mind, I could no way sign that form saying I was defrauding the public in negligence to Mr. Larry. That's what, and if I understand, if I got to pay whatever I got to pay today, but he wasn't a first-time customer and never been there. He's been drinking coffee at his house. Every time he called, had stuff to sell, had to go see him. Had to go, and he bought that same day. This record's in here. He bought an excavator same day he didn't that day, but anyway, he sold a good bit of equipment, and he was standing right there in front of me, as he always is. So that's the reason why I sold it for less, because I thought. But truthfully, in my mind, I think Auction Flex, when it divided it and he got his settlement, he thinks in his mind he got $700 for a $2,000 set of tires. Which we talked about that, and I explained it to him. But
He didn't understand.
we just went and paid him.
He didn't understand.
He didn't understand.
But you didn't pay him the 2,000. I mean, you didn't get the 2,000 for the tires. That's not the.
No, we got $1,450 total money. And the first, that we put the two together. The first one I didn't get any bids, so I just put them together. But,
We understand.
that's all I have.
I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session.
Second.
Roll call.
Yes, Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Ms. Jacobs?
Yes.
Mr. Lockett?
Yes.
Mr. Sims?
Yes.
Mr. Warren? All right, we're in executive session.
Mother's unbelievable, have you seen her?
We're on the record.
Terrible.
Is there a motion to come out of executive?
I make a motion, we come out of executive session.
I second.
Roll call.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mr. Jacobs? I'm so sorry. Ms. Jacobs?
Yes.
Mr. Lockett?
Yes.
Mr. Sims?
Yes.
Miss Warren? See, I'll do it to him. Mr. Warren?
Yes.
I didn't want to just mess up hers.
That's okay.
I need to be.
I live in the French Quarter.
Recuse myself from voting in this matter.
Okay.
Just give a little broad.
Yeah. Rex is a contract auctioneer that works for us from time to time. So I need to be.
Okay.
You understand?
All right, do we have a motion on the
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion that we find him guilty of 3121A5, which is incompetency of gross negligence, and that he not be fined any monetary amount, and that he be placed on 3 months inactive probation,
Correct, is there a second?
unsupervised probation. Yeah.
I'll second that.
Roll call vote?
Yes, Mr. Henderson? I'm sorry, he's recused. Ms. Jacobs?
Yes.
Mr. Lockett?
Yes.
Mr. Sims?
Yes.
Mr. Warren?
Yes.
All right.
The findings of facts and legal matters will be drawn up and sent to you
Okay.
when that happens.
You understand that there's no fine. You
No fine.
understand there's no fine
And no intent to deceive.
and no intent to deceive. It's just the way
appreciate
the statute's written.
Yes.
And you're on 3 months unsupervised probation, which means you don't report anything to the board.
All right, but you don't come back here with
But
another
you don't come
problem.
back.
Yes.
Get it in writing, get him to initial it or whatever.
Thank you. Thank y'all.
No, we got one more.
And y'all are welcome to leave, or you can stay, whatever you'd like to do.
Did you want to get in touch with this road?
Oh, yes, I forgot.
Are we still on the record?
Yes.
This is in the matter of Wayne Coughlin, which, I want to see that number. is docket number 17-011. Mr. Cochran is present. I'm going to ask him to come forward and have a seat. The complainant in this case, and make sure we're clear on this, is Diane Rose. Ms. Rose has asked to be able to listen and to participate today in the proceedings. She's going to do that by telephone. We are texting her the phone number. We have the phone over here. I'm going to need to have Mr. Cochran, Mr. Phillips, and Ms. Rose sworn when she gets on the phone. Or if you want to go ahead and swear the two of them in, and when she calls in, we'll get her sworn. It's up to you.
Let's just go ahead and get these two sworn in, just in case we don't get it.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Did you text her?
I did.
With regard to this matter, I would offer to introduce into the record the notice of noncompliance, and this is a multi-complaint situation, some brought by the board themselves for your review, and some by the complainant. The first notice of noncompliance was sent on May 17th, signed for on May 21st, basically with regard to one element of the complaint, specifically that having to do with not having an escrow account and auctioning without a license. We'd offer to introduce this as Board Exhibit A. With regard to the next notice of non-compliance, dated May 31st, 2018, the failure to respond to a subpoena in full by the Louisiana Auctioneers Licensing Board. We did not get a signed green card, but I have attached the fact that notice was left for Mr. Cochran and he did not respond. That we would ask to be Board Exhibit B.
Be admitted.
With regard to this matter, I'll introduce some evidence on the notice of potential failure to comply, dated June 25th, 2018. With regard to the allegations of the original complaint, again, we show that he did not accept the service of the complaint through a green card. That is our understanding. I thought I had attached here, but I will find it and put in the record that he was received notice. With regard to this matter, and I'll ask him about this, Mr. Cochran has told us on numerous occasions that it's difficult for him to get certified mail from his post office, and as a result, we do send him regular mail. Everything, we send him 2 copies of everything to make sure he gets it. We would offer to use this in as Exhibit Board C. And with regard to this matter, we have the notice of hearing sent to Mr. Cochran. It was returned unclaimed, but we also sent him one that was paid, dated July 26, 2018. We offer to introduce that into the evidence as Board Exhibit D.
Exhibit C and D admitted.
One should have a copy of the complaint filed as well as the notices of the matter. I need to have, we have to have Sandy also sworn in on this one. Because some of this is a matter, we're not ready for it.
We're not ready. Okay.
We're waiting to see if Ms. Rose, do you know if she's received it?
It shows delivered.
Okay.
I asked her to please call the correct number for auctioneer hearing.
Okay, so we will swear everyone in.
They're sworn.
They're sworn.
You solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
With regards to the first element of the complaint, his failure to have an escrow account, but more importantly, to auction without license, I would ask Ms. Edmonds to review the actual license file of Mr. Cochran. and tell us his date of renewal for the year 2018?
Oh, Ms. Dow, I did not know you were going to ask me that. I can log on to the computer from here remotely and see what day his deposit made it into our QuickBooks program.
Will it be on my card?
But I do not put a date on the renewal.
He says he has his card.
Will it be on my card?
It does not have a renewal date on the card either.
With regard, did you, as of January 31st, 2018, had he renewed his license?
No,
And how do you know that?
just memory.
Well, you also sent him a notice, is that correct?
There is a notice, yes, thank you for that. I'm not used to
Ma'am,
this.
I'll testify to that.
On February 26th, he was sent certified mail that came back to us, and it's the standardized cease and desist order, letting them know that your license, you failed to renew your license. It is now in delinquent status and therefore is invalid.
And did you send him anything else?
There is a regular piece of mail that gets mailed right here, January 19th, 2018, regular mail. Indicates we've not received your Louisiana auctioneer renewal application for 2018. Please be advised your license expired December 31st, 2017.
Ms. Coughlin, you're saying you're not disputing that you were late?
No, ma'am, it was like March, if my memory serves me correctly.
Okay, March 2018.
Yes, ma'am, I'm not trying to deny nothing.
Okay.
If my memory serves me correctly, it was around the 1st of March. I'm one of them chicken sellers that she was talking about earlier. It was a rough time. We couldn't come up with nothing.
Hope to have these roads available. With regard to this matter, Ms. Coughlin, I will ask you, you believe that you did not get your license renewed till March 1st?
I think it was around that. I don't know for a fact, but I think it was around the end of February, 1st of March, somewhere in there. But I can't remember for sure, but I think it was around in that.
Did you did you call any auctions?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Yeah, in January and February of this year?
I don't remember. Well, I think we did have one in January, but February, yes, for sure.
Okay. So that you're admitting that you may have called an auction?
Yes, ma'am.
Without a license?
Yes, ma'am.
With regard to the matter involved with your escrow account, did you have an escrow account at the beginning of this year?
No, ma'am, I didn't.
Did you have an escrow account last year?
No, ma'am, I didn't.
Okay. Do you now have an escrow account?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
And where is that account located?
And same bank, Kinder, Louisiana. I got the checkbook in my back pocket. It's all I could find when I left the house this morning to it.
Okay. Would you mind pulling out your checkbook and looking at it?
Yeah, it's right here.
Happens to be there.
I'm sure she handed me the right one. Yes, ma'am, escrow account.
Good.
And can I explain what was going on with that?
Well, I just want to make sure, first of all, that you...
That's it.
Okay.
Evidently, she had to void one of the checks, wrote it wrong.
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Hey, I sent Anna you an email with my questions.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, yes, ma'am, but we've already begun. So if you can mute your phone, we'll let you know when we're ready for you. That would be great.
Thank you.
All right, so with regard to this matter, he's produced a checkbook, and the first one's voided out already. It says Donald W. Cothran Jr., DBA CNC Auction Company, escrow account. And do you know when this account was opened?
It was, I don't remember the name of the lady I spoke to. It was one of the attorneys, but she explained to me, I had misunderstood it. That's the reason I didn't have it. I thought the way I was doing it was the way I was supposed to. And I can't remember the exact date I opened that account.
What were you doing?
What I did is I had a business account and I had my personal account, and all the proceeds from my business went through that business account. I was understanding that all the proceeds from an auction had to go through one single account so it could be tracked, and if that was okay. I misunderstood the process. And I spoke to Miss Sandy. Miss Sandy helped me understand the way I was actually supposed to do it. Then I spoke to the attorney, and I can't remember the attorney's name.
That was me.
That was you? Okay. And they explained it to me better, so I went and opened another account and to do it the right way.
So you provided me with a letter. Is this a letter that you sent to the board or to me? Or a copy of the letter you sent?
Difference is, yes, ma'am, it looks like it.
We're not going to introduce in evidence a copy of his letter to the board with regard to this matter. Do you recall the date you sent this letter? It's not dated.
Yeah, I don't. It was, if I had to guess, I think it was around maybe July, June. I can't remember exactly.
Of this year?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to introduce this letter into evidence as Exhibit Board E.
And the license part, I was confused on that too. To be honest, and I know I was wrong, it wasn't, but we were going through we're still in a matter of fact, Saturday was probably our last auction we're going to have. I just didn't have the money, and I did not put it very high on priority list, and I know that's wrong, because I really didn't think I had to have it since we also ran a livestock auction. We're done through the Agriculture and Forestry Department, and for livestock, we don't need an auctioneer's license. And I've been to other livestock auctions where they might sell some halters or some saddles too, and they don't have licensed auctioneers, and I thought as long as you had that, you didn't have to worry about it. So I kind of figured, well, as soon as I get a little extra money, I'll take care of it. That's what happened. You know, we was in a financial bind, and I really didn't have the money to do it. You know.
You sell things other than livestock towards your auctions?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
What specifically do you sell? Junk or?
I've sold everything from Little Debbie cakes to pots and pans and anything you can imagine in between. You know? Okay. I'll put it this way. We don't sell old TVs, clothes, and mattresses. Any other than that, it's legal, we sell it. Okay. You know?
All right. And how long have you been in business?
Total 5 years.
Okay. And with regard to that, how long have you had a license with this board?
My first license was in 14, so it's 4 years. I'm sorry, 4 years, not 5 years.
All right. I know I've asked some questions, but I actually want to put on my evidence with my investigator at this time, if it's all right to proceed. With regard to the other issues involved, let me ask you this. Does anybody have a question regarding the escrow account or his licensing before we go forward?
Yeah, I have a question. Did you ever think that maybe, did you ever read the rules to see that an auctioneer has to have an escrow account?
Yes, ma'am, but I misunderstood it. And when I went to open them up, the lady at the bank told me, they said I needed an escrow account. I really had no clue what it was. I mean, I was a heavy equipment operator most of my life. I've never messed with this kind of stuff. And the lady at the bank said, were you doing an estate? I said, no, but I was told I have to have an escrow account. She said, well, escrow account is when you're going to handle someone else's money like a single person. She said, just run everything through this account. And I just confused. I didn't realize. I didn't realize. I've never done that intentionally. I didn't intentionally do it wrong. But yeah, I've done it wrong, and I know that now. Okay.
Any other questions with regard to the escrow account or licensing issues? I'm going to, with regard to the remainder of this, I'm going to call my investigator, Mr. Roger Phillips. Mr. Phillips, are you aware of this complaint?
Yes, I am.
Okay, and have you done the investigation?
I have.
Could you tell us what information you've received with regard to this investigation?
You want me to start with the complaint itself?
Yes, go through the whole thing.
Actually, I may have misspoken. I inherited this file from Jim Steele, who had to step aside at the first of the year. So I actually received the complaint and paperwork on February 14th, 2018. The complaint was filed by Diane Rose on behalf of Mr. Alan Moore. She had some correspondence and some dealings with Mr. Cawthorn prior to her filing the complaint to the board. The simple thing, or the simplest way to explain this is, Mr. Cawthorn conducted an auction for Mr. Moore. primarily everything on his property. Contents of the home, contents of the barn, equipment, etc. The contracts used are questionable. I have copies of 3 of them. One in particular has been altered 3 times. It is reported to me, and I should probably clarify now, that I have never spoken with Mr. Moore. Everything that I have received has been delivered through Diane Rhodes. So I'm somewhat at a loss as to Mr. Moore's appreciation of what has happened, specific details on how it happened, and I'll get into the loss itself. But
is Mr. Moore incapacitated?
I was led to believe that he had some health issues. I have been corrected. Apparently, he is 85 years old and profoundly deaf.
I see.
But I don't know his physical abilities, nor do I know his mental abilities. I have learned that Mr. Cawthron approached Mr. Moore to assist him with the auction. This was not solicited by Mr. Moore. Mr. Moore, in answers to interrogatories, explained that he had contacted several other auctioneers, all of whom were not able to assist him. Mr. Cawthron presented at Mr. Moore's home one afternoon and explained that he had heard that Mr. Moore was looking for an auctioneer through a friend of Mr. Cawthron's. And again, I'm at a loss as to exactly what took place. Mr. Moore has explained that he and Mr. Cawthron walked through the house, they walked through the barn, he viewed the equipment, and Mr. Cawthron told him that the auction would be performed online and that he would want a 10% commission. Mr. Cawthron advised at some point, and I don't know the timing on this, I know that he arrived reportedly after 4:30, explained that he had quite a distance to drive to get home, so he just basically handed contracts to Mr. Moore and asked him to sign them. There was no inventory done. Mr. Moore asked about, a listing of the items. To my knowledge, that has not materialized. So the initial issue is the manner in which the contract was engaged, the fact that there is no inventory of anything on the property. The only thing that I can use are the documents from the contracts, which are questionable, as well as the consignor settlements and the buyer's settlements, or the buyer statements. So that's all I have to work with.
Who signed the contract? Was it Mr. Moore himself?
It was Mr. Moore himself. It was Mr. Moore. The first auction was actually performed, I believe, at C&C Auction's physical location on Old Highway 13 in Mammoth. This was not an online auction. This was a physical auction. The records are really confusing.
Well, let me ask you some questions.
Okay.
First of all, after you got the information, did you actually go to the auction house?
I went to the auction house on March 17th to serve Mr. Cawthron with a subpoena. So yes, I have physically visited that location.
And that's located outside Mammoth?
Yes.
Which parish?
In Allen Parish.
Okay.
No. Benjamin. See Benjamin.
It is Benjamin?
Yes, sir. See Benjamin.
You sure?
Are you sure?
Promise you. I'm there all the time.
So that's the address at 3029 Old Highway 13?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. That is Benjamin Parish.
All right, so you've seen Mr. Cawthron auction items physically?
I did not stay for the actual auction, but...
Did you see what he was going to auction?
Yes, I did.
And that included not only animals and birds, but other items?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Now, with regard to the actual complaint filed by, now, you understand the relationship of Ms. Rose to Mr. Moore?
I do.
I don't understand it. Is she a curator for him, a
She has a
daughter?
power of attorney.
Or she has a power of attorney?
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Rose?
Yes.
All right, you have a power of attorney you provided us with regard, and that's your relationship to Mr. Moore?
Yes.
I don't know if we ever swore her in.
We did.
Okay, can I ask that Ms. Rose be sworn?
Ms. Rose, if you raise your right hand, you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you.
And she did provide us with a power of attorney. I provided one to the hearing officer today, and he's aware of her relationship. And you have determined what she can do with regard to the proceedings today.
Yes, Ms. Rose, I think you can participate today to the extent that you wanted to. The only question I have for you is whether or not you have any kind of direct or indirect financial interest in Mr. Moore's transactions?
No, I do not.
Okay. What's your relationship with Mr. Moore?
A friend.
Okay. All right, and just so you know, we are going to allow you to participate today on behalf of Mr. Moore, but in the event that this matter does get appealed up to a district court level, he will need to have an attorney to represent him in such a matter. You understand?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Now, she has been sworn?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we will talk now about the complaint filed on behalf of Mr. Moore by Ms. Rhodes. Basically, going back to Mr. Phillips, if we can get back on with that. You reviewed the complaint, is that correct?
Yes, I have.
All right, so you investigated this with regard to, what did you do?
First, of course, I reviewed the complaint, went to the auction house to serve Mr. Kaufman.
With a subpoena?
With a subpoena. And then I attempted to make contact with Mr. Moore to discuss with him, in more of an investigatory level, what had occurred.
And did you do so?
I was not able to.
Did you request information with regard to contacting Mr. Moore?
Yes, I did.
And were you able to get that information?
No, I was not.
And with regard to that matter, were interrogatories issued to Ms. Rose to provide information from Mr. Moore?
Yes, they were.
We would offer introducing evidence again, we may question Ms. Moore about the authenticity of this, but these are the actual responses we got, and I will ask that this be admitted provisionally as F, word F.
Admitted.
Now, you reviewed the interrogatories, but you did not get these interrogatories until when? Let's say July of this year.
Yes, it was July.
All right, and you reviewed this document also?
Yes, I did.
Okay. With regard to that, to the information, did you talk to Mr. Cochran about the complaint?
The only conversation I've had with Mr. Kaufman was at the time that I served him and advised him that Mr. Morris had filed a complaint.
Now, with regard to, you served the subpoena. Now, you had the consignment contract, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And what else documents did you have that you reviewed with regard to this particular set of auctions? I think there was more than one auction.
There were more than one auction.
Can you tell us when the auctions occurred?
Okay, the auctions occurred on July 22nd of 2017, August 5th of 2017, and September 9th of 2017.
And with regard to those auctions, were they all on site or online?
2 of them, I believe, were on site. Only 1 was on proxy bid.
Okay, did you review the proxy bid records?
Yes, I did.
What was sold at that time?
At that time, there were only 5 items that were sold online.
And what were those?
They were a 1942 Ford 9N tractor. There was a 2005 Harley Davidson motorcycle. There was, and I don't believe I have the description handy, a John Deere tractor. And can you give me just a moment, please? I have that handy if y'all like it.
Have you located the information?
Not exactly what I'm looking at. Here we go. Okay, there was a John Deere 5020 tractor that was sold, the Harley Davidson motorcycle. I am not sure about this barbecue trailer. There was a 16-foot homemade lowboy trailer. And the 1942 9N tractor. And I am just not clear at this point whether the barbecue trailer, the land pride finishing mower.
And these were part of Mr. Moore's estate?
Yes, they were.
Okay. There were other items sold at the same time,
They were, yes.
but those were not involved with Mr. Moore's estate, is that correct?
No, this apparently was a multi-estate sale.
Okay. And with regard to that matter, did you have a chance to contact any of the purchasers of those items online?
I did not, no.
I thought you talked to the motorcycle.
No, I did not. I located him, but I was not able to reach him.
Okay. So you did not talk to any of the actual purchasers?
No, I did not.
Okay. With regard to that matter, then, the other 2 auctions, your testimony is those were on site?
Yes.
Okay. And those were reflected in documents sent to Mr. Moore by Mr. Cochran?
Yes.
Okay. And what were those documents?
Those were consignor settlements as well as, I think, just consignor settlements.
Okay. We later got other information.
We did. We did receive the buyer's statements.
Okay. Now, with regard to the subpoena, do you know if all of the subpoena was answered?
I do not believe it was.
Okay. And you have reviewed all the documents received as a result of the subpoena?
Yes, I have.
Okay. And does it reflect what was actually served in the subpoena?
Yes.
Okay. And you should have a copy of what was requested in the subpoena and what was not provided in your packets. Now, with regard to this matter, you had a chance to review these documents as well as the complaint file. Can you tell us at this time whether the items that were sold were reflected all of the estate of Mr. Moore that he turned over to Mr. Cochran?
Again, without an inventory to work from, I cannot say that.
And there was no inventory prepared by either the auctioneer or the consignor, is that correct?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay. With regard to that matter, did you find any, you said that there were some issues with the consignment contracts.
Yes.
Could you describe that in more detail?
I think the most egregious item is what I believe Ms. Rose has marked as Exhibit 4A.
And that's to her complaint, is that correct?
Yes, with her complaint, yes. Exhibit 4A, which lists 5 items: Troy-Bilt generator, I can't make the name out, but a wood splitter, a 16-foot trailer, a 6-foot finish mower, and a 6-tooth cultivator.
And what's the record about that document?
Again, I do not have originals, but I do have 3 copies of that document, and each of them is different.
What is different?
On what I believe to be the original, and this is a copy only, and this would be Exhibit 5B, shows Mr. Moore's signature. It is not dated. It has the description of the 5 items. It shows 10% commission, and there is a notation of hauling $100.
Okay.
In the next copy, it shows that the 10% is written over with 25%. And it shows check number 228 issued in the amount of $321.75. My apologies to the board. I just had that paperwork and I don't know what I've done with it. Well, let me move with what I've got here. This next document, marked 4A, shows again that the total sale price of $429, check number 2228 issued, less the expenses of $107.25, which I believe would be the commission, for a total of $321.75. The next document that is reflected in there
Let's go on to something else. Well, maybe we'll come back to that in a minute.
Yeah, we'll come.
With regard to the specific information, did you find checks available that told you exactly what was paid
Yes.
to Mr. Moore?
Correct.
And could you describe those checks?
Sure. The first check that I have access to is check number 2166, addressed to Alan Moore, with no notation other than $708. And it does appear to have been negotiated by Mr. Moore.
Does that match any of the designer statements?
Yes, it does. That reflects the statement of July 22nd of 2017.
Do you have another check with Mr. Moore?
have, again, referencing the other check number 2228, issued on September 10th, 2017, to Mr. Alan Moore for $4,196.75.
And you noted, and does that match, excuse me, one of the consignor statements sent to Mr. Moore?
Yes, it does.
Now, with regard to this matter, again, going back to your contract, your statement is that there were alterations of the documents, and can you tell whether these alterations occurred before or after Mr. Moore signed them?
I do not know.
With regard to this matter, are there any amounts shown that were not paid by Mr. Cochran as far as the consignor statements is concerned?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. So, but you do not have, I think your statement was, inventory of everything that was consigned to Mr. Cochran by Mr. Moore?
Correct.
And you don't know why there's no inventory list? And you reviewed both all the documents provided by Ms. Rose as well as all the documents provided by Mr. Cochran for the sale. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Where did you see any of these documents a reserve?
I did not.
Okay. And in the consignment contracts, there's nothing saying or advising about the right to take a reserve or any reserve taken?
None whatsoever.
Okay. Now, there's an allegation with regard to the complaint about Mr. Cochran's right to enter Mr. Moore's home. Are you aware of that allegation?
Yes.
And did you investigate that?
And we're referring to the Watergate?
Yes.
I did not look into that only because without speaking with Mr. Moore, I have no way to validate the information that was supplied to me by Ms. Rose.
Now, with regard to, now, there are allegations with regard to firearms.
Yes.
All right. Were there any firearms sold that were Mr. Moore's?
No.
Okay. But there were firearms in the proximate set?
Yes, they were.
Okay. Have you had an occasion to check with the appropriate federal authorities or local authorities with regard to this matter?
Yes, I have.
And what did you learn?
There is a specific federal statute under 18 U.S.C. subsection 923A titled Engaging in the Business of Dealing in Firearms, and then in parentheses, auctioneers.
Okay. And do you know what the rule is for that?
I do.
What is that rule?
Let me get to the actual statute. The short version is that an auctioneer may sell firearms only if licensed as a federal firearms licensee dealer.
Right.
Here it is. And I'm reading from ATF Rule 96-2. And it reads, auctioneers who regularly conduct consignment-type auctions of firearms, for example, held every 1 to 2 months on behalf of firearms owners, where the auctioneer takes possession of the firearms pursuant to a consignment contract with the owner of the firearms, giving the auctioneer authority to sell the firearms, and providing for a commission to be paid by the owner upon sale of the firearms, are required to obtain a license as a dealer in firearms.
Okay.
So what that equates to under the rule is an auctioneer needs to have a federal firearms licensee present to perfect the actual sales if it is an estate. If the auctioneer takes possession of the weapons, he himself must have a federal firearms license.
So that's, do you have any idea of whether or not Mr. Cochran abided by that rule?
I spoke with Mr. Cothran about that and asked him specifically if he did take possession of weapons. Mr. Cothran informed me that he uses 2 different federal firearms licensees, but only in matters where a weapon is going to be shipped.
Is that your understanding of what the rule is?
No. No, the mere fact that Mr. Cothran took possession of weapons puts him in the category of an unlicensed firearms dealer.
With regard to this matter, is there anything else you investigated with regard to Mr. Moore's complaint?
Yes.
What was that?
I contacted the Allen Parish School Board.
Well, let's not get into sales tax, because now he's saying he's not Allen Parish, he's saying he's Evangeline Parish.
Correct.
And we're going to talk to him about that. Is there anything else? With regard to this matter, I'll turn to the witness. Mr. Feldman, do you have any questions for the investigator?
The law you just read about the firearms, it said if someone routinely holds firearm auctions. I've never done that. That's the only one I've ever done, and it was part of an estate for an old man. His wife died. Had nothing to do with Mr. Moore. That's the only time I've ever done it. The FFLs I used were only for the people that was coming pick them up. Because to ship it, it don't do me no good to use an FFL here because it has to be shipped to an FFL. You understand? I used one in Eunice and one in Oakdale, not Elizabeth, Louisiana. Don't even remember their names, but I can't get them. That was for people that traveled to pick it up. You understand? That was not for shipped. So, yes, I understand I was not supposed to take effect with them, possession of them. I was supposed to leave them with the man that owned the estate when I done that for him, and I did because I didn't realize that part, but that law does not affect me because that was for someone that routinely does firearm auctions. That's the only time I've ever sold guns to an auction, and that was for a man somewhere else. That was not Mr. Moore.
Do you recall the conversation?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Just questions.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
We'll let you
I'm sorry.
testify in a minute.
I'm sorry. One thing, you had the list of stuff I'd supposedly sold for Mr. Moore online. Okay, you have that list in front of you?
Somewhere in here, yes.
Because I'm wondering where the list, because I have it right here where I've got a list of everything I sold for Mr. Moore, what I sent Mr. Moore. It's this piece of paper right here, and it says Exhibit 5.
Looking for your price of business. Okay, got it. Okay.
I'm sorry, I've done it, but I'm going to put it in a question form. Do you have paper showing that the John Deere tractor belonged to Mr. Moore?
No, but I believe it's on consignment contract. 1942 Ford tractor.
Okay, you said John Deere. You had the 42 Ford tractor, but you said a John Deere was on there?
I believe I understood that belonged to Mr. Moore.
No, that was not part of his. I have the list of 5 things. I had a Troy-Bill tiller, Land Pride finish mower, Harley-Davidson motorcycle, 16-foot homemade trailer, and a 9-in Ford tractor. Those are 5 items sold online from Mr. Moore. The John Deere was not. The barbecue trailer was not. Look.
All right, I stand corrected.
I don't know how to put it. I mean, there's a lot of inaccuracies in what he...
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know how to put it in the question form. You understand what I'm saying?
Let's go ahead. Ms. Rose?
Yes.
Do you have any questions for the investigator?
I have comments.
Well, we'll go ahead and let you testify shortly. Do you have any questions for the investigator?
Yes. How many auctions again were in live auctions?
Yep. I am able to document 2 live auctions.
That's incorrect. There were 3 live auctions and 1 online auction.
Okay, we'll let you testify about that when we get to it. We'll get to your testimony. Do you have any other questions for the investigator?
Yes, Mr. Phillips, did you submit an investigative report to the board?
Yes, I did.
LALB board?
Well, no, you haven't.
Oh, not to the board, no.
That's correct.
To Ms. Dow.
Through the staff you did? And do you mind, I've never received a copy and you didn't answer it in my email. Is there a particular reason why?
You didn't send it here. He actually prepared it for today, so this is the first I've seen it.
Oh, that's a shame. Okay, thank you.
Does the board have any questions for the investigator? Okay. I'll ask you to stick around with regard to that matter. In case there are any other questions.
5 minutes left on the tape.
Should we pause and let him start a new tape?
Yes. We could just take a pause and let him change the tape out.
Watch the end of videotape number 2 going off the record, 2:05.
Thanks, Mike.
You're welcome. We're back on the record at 2:10.
All right, let's do a little test. Ms. Rose, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. You're the one who filed this complaint, is that correct?
Correct.
All right. And you did it with a power of attorney?
Yes, I did.
And your statement today under oath is that everything there is true and correct to the best of your knowledge?
Can you repeat that, please?
Everything in your complaint is true and correct to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to ask some questions. Now, you have provided us with interrogatories that you obtained from Mr. Moore. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And who answered the questions on this particular set of interrogatories?
He did.
Okay. And I think everyone now has a copy of these. Now, with regard to this, I've got in front of, and the board members have it in front of them at this time. Basically, you provided his contact information, and basically you also, number 2, it says a consignment contract for the settlement. It says that which he signed. The answer on the interrogatories, he says, is I have to say yes as if it looks familiar to my signature, but I do not remember signing it. Is that what he said?
I believe that's what the document says.
Okay, so as far as you know, that's true and correct?
As far as I know.
Okay. All right. So
I might mention the difference in the writing and handwritten answers is he has a shaky hand, so he had his granddaughter write in most of that, all except for one question.
yeah, I think at the end it looks to be someone else's handwriting.
Yeah.
All right. Now, the statement according to, on page 2, number 4 of Mr. Moore, the number he received 4 checks from CNC Auction Company.
Okay.
Okay. And then, let me see something. He states that he did not have an inventory. Do you have an inventory with regard to what was consigned to Mr. Cochran?
Well, I have an inventory, but not one to which was consigned.
Okay.
I only have an inventory because originally he was not going to hire a auctioneer. We were going to post an ad on the bulletin board, and I had written down the outside items, but nothing on the inside of the house was written down.
Okay. So have you provided that inventory as part of your complaint?
Yes.
Now, there's a list of items that you provide, that's number 15 on page 5, that starts with 2 additional tractor attachments, a ripper and cultivator, and goes through a number of items. Is Mr. Moore, or you on his behalf, contending that these items were not paid for or returned to Mr. Moore, to yourself?
Correct.
Okay, so that is page 5 and page 6. Also on page 7, if you will see, this is, page 7 is the overflow of anything that wasn't asked and he wanted to say. And that
document is actually, I think, completed by Mr. Moore himself in his handwriting. Is that correct?
Let me see here. On page 7?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, page 7 is Mr. Moore's handwriting.
Now, you made some allegations, and I'd like to go through them, and specifically in the complaint with you. Now, with regard to this complaint, I think it's contagious. With regard to, I believe that you allege that Ms. Rose, I have all right, so we have a check and consignment contract showing payment of $4,196.75. And it includes a 10% commission, a hauling fee of $250, and a cleaning fee, all equipment, of $240 for total expenses of $975. Is it your understanding that this was actually the contract entered into by Mr. Moore?
The 4196 of the online auctions that were sold, that's the price they sold for. However, Mr. Moore expected a lot more for that, and Mr. Crawford assured him if he did it online, he would get more than that. It's not nowhere near the fair market value.
Okay. Do you know, however, whether or not he agreed to these expenses?
Oh, the expenses? Not to my knowledge.
And with regard to the items that, with regard to that's sold on site, were there any expenses agreed to with regard to those?
Any restrictions?
Expenses.
Oh, expenses, not that I know of. He charged him like $100 for towing them off to carry him down to his farm.
So
Mr. Moore requested that why didn't he auction them there at his place of residence? And Mr. Kaufman said he could get more money for them if he took them to his farm.
So which farm do you refer to?
I guess in Mamu, the auction place.
So Mr. Kaufman's auction, is that correct?
Right, that's correct.
All right. Now, you have made a number of allegations with regard to how the auction was conducted. I'd like to go through those at this time. Now, you're saying that, again, we say that there was an issue with regard to the items which you believe Mr. Kaufman had access to and which he did not account for. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And with regard to the access Mr. Cochran had, what specifically, or let me rephrase that, how specifically did Mr. Cochran have access?
He had the key. to Mr. Moore's house.
Okay. And who gave him that key?
Mr. Moore gave him the key.
And what was the purpose of giving him that key?
There were a couple of items left over in the house before Mr. Moore moved that Mr. Cochran had to retrieve for the auction.
Okay. Do you know what those items were?
I think it was a water bed, and I don't know what else.
Now, with regard to that, I believe your complaint basically stated that Mr. Cochran misused the access to the house?
Yes, he did.
And how did he do that?
Mr. Moore sent a neighbor's daughter over to clean the house and found Mr. Cochran and a woman, unidentified, not his wife, coming out of the bedroom half dressed.
Did you know this firsthand?
I did not see this firsthand, no.
Okay, and who did see this firsthand?
Did what?
Who saw this firsthand?
The daughter that was hired to clean the house.
I'm going to move to strike that testimony, counsel. It's clearly hearsay.
Okay. All right. With regard to, I think you're also stated that you allege that he sold items for less than they were worth. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Which items are you referring to?
Most of them. The ones that were accounted for in the document. The tractor, it's an antique tractor running perfectly fine, had 2 new tires, was more than what he sold the tractor for. The Harley Davidson was half the price of the going number for that model. And the trailer was valued a little over $1,300.
But you're aware that there was no reserve placed on these items at sale?
Yes, I am aware that there wasn't a technically committed reserve price, but the contract was not a valid contract because Mr. Moore did not have informed consent.
Okay. With regard to your allegations on behalf of Mr. Moore, could you please describe the specific allegations to the board at this time, other than what we've discussed in your testimony?
Well, I believe also there's some question about who was actually bidding on these items. Two of the 3 items online were purchased by the same individual. I was wondering how many people actually were bidding on that, and if in fact the person winning those 2 items and the third item also, were they friends of Mr. Cochran? Did he know these people?
Okay, we're going to ask Mr. Cochran that in a minute. What else do you have?
Everything else I've written down in my multiple-page complaint.
Well, okay. She's not ignoring.
So I will, Mr. Cochran, do you have any questions for Ms. Rose?
One thing I would like to say to her, I don't have a question. Is it possible?
Then you can
It's
tell-
nice. It's not nothing.
Well, no, you can testify later on.
Okay.
Okay. Does any of the board have a question for Ms. Rose?
I do.
Well, actually,
I do.
go ahead.
Ms. Rose, can you hear me?
Yes, who's speaking?
I'm James Sims. I'm a member of the board. You say items were sold below fair market value on the antiques?
Yes.
Do you have appraisal of any type on this stuff, any written appraisal from a certified appraiser that would be recognized by a court of law?
That would be hard to do since the items were taken before they were sold. But I do have documentation showing the value of similar items.
Similar items has no bearing on this. I need a specific appraisal for a specific item. I mean, hearsay is innuendo. I mean, unless I can see it in black and white, you got an appraisal on it, I'm not going to dispute you. But normally, if you're going to file a complaint that it was sold under fair market value, you should have a certified appraisal to back up what you're insinuating.
That's not my understanding. My understanding is if I could show that in fact other items similar to his in value were the same or different, then that's all that was required. I don't know why anybody would pay somebody to come out and give a certified appraisal for items that they were selling if they thought to be sold respectively to the correct amount.
Ms. Moore, it disappoints you. It's done every day. But that's okay. That's all the questions I have.
I have a question, Ms. Moore. This is Tolene Jacobs. The power of attorney that you have, is it limited in any way? Is it a general power of attorney? Because we don't have a copy of that power of attorney.
I can provide a copy of it. I did not make a copy of it.
Is it all broad and does it encompass everything?
Yeah. I had him.
Is everything in it?
Mm-hmm.
Everything for the purposes of this hearing.
And what was the reason for your having or receiving this power of attorney?
I was requested to admit one by Ms. Dow.
Well, I'm wondering, can the complainant himself act in any way for himself, or is he limited? And if so, how?
You don't have what now?
Is the complainant limited in any way, and is that why you have the power of attorney?
Not that I'm aware of.
In other words, he has intellectual capacity to contract and do everything?
Yep. I'd have to read through the whole power of attorney again, but I thought it was pretty complete.
I don't think y'all are hearing.
I don't think she understands your question.
Yeah. No.
You could move closer and ask her.
Huh?
You might be able to move closer. I don't think she can hear you properly.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. In other words, under what circumstances were you given the power of attorney? In other words...
To handle this complaint.
But is it just to handle the complaint, or do you have a general power of attorney for the complainant's business, Mr. Moore's business?
The intent of the power of attorney was to handle this complaint.
So just this complaint?
That was the intent of the power of attorney.
That makes sense to me. If necessary, I did provide a copy of the hearing officer to allow Ms. Rose to speak today.
Is there a particular reason why Mr. Moore couldn't handle the complaint himself? If he has capacity?
Yes, there is. He's very hard of hearing and lives remotely. That's why he's not on this call.
Does he have a hearing aid?
Yes, he does.
Well,
doesn't work very well. The government only issues them once every 5 years, and of course people's hearings change before 5 years is up.
Is he a disabled veteran or anything?
He's a veteran, for sure. I don't know if he's classified as disabled veteran or not. Caught in the Korean War.
I didn't know if he maybe had hearing damage from the war or something. I was curious.
All right, let me say this. I submitted it to the hearing officer for the purposes of today. It is, as I recall, and I'll have to pull it, I apparently only have a digital copy of it, but I printed it out for today. But it is a general power of attorney. Now, our problem in investigating this was that we wanted to speak directly to Mr. Moore, who now lives.
It would seem that Mr. Moore has capacity, and to give a power of attorney just for purposes of this hearing, I don't think it's proper, but...
Yeah, it's much more general than this, but it does allow all litigation.
But why can't he participate in a hearing?
Illinois. It's actually on the first page of the interrogatory answer.
Okay, well...
He's provided those to us in July.
Okay, I have a problem.
I know the last check was mailed to Pleasant Hill.
Yeah, but I think this, now...
Because he was also Pleasant Hill, Louisiana at one time.
Oh, okay.
Fine.
But his address is located there.
In essence, what we're getting is hearsay information through someone that has a limited power of attorney on behalf of a party who is a complainant, who is not addressing this board.
I have provided you with a sworn statement from Mr. Moore, which you can have.
That doesn't answer all the questions here that have been going backwards and forwards. And I really don't know if this young lady has the capacity to answer those questions. I think only the complainant can answer some of these questions.
And that's what he's tried to do in that document I provided everybody. It was under oath, sworn before a notary public, where he lives. Does the board have any other question for Ms. Rose?
I don't at this time.
I'd like to question...
One question I thought of. Is that possible?
Yes, I'm sorry. Ms. Scott, do you have a question, Ms. Rose?
Yes. Ms. Rose.
Yes, if you could please stop people from shuffling paper by the speakerphone, it lets me hear better.
I'm sorry, Ms. Rose. It was right by the speaker. I didn't realize it. When I originally spoke to you on the phone, you told me you wanted the information, the documents sent to you that I had of Mr. Moore, and I asked you if you had power of attorney because I couldn't just turn over his documents with his personal information to just anybody that called my phone. And you told me that, yes, that you had all that. So could I ask you what the date is on that power of attorney?
That is untrue. You did not ask me for a power of attorney. As a matter of fact, you sent those to my cell phone because you didn't have a scanner to scan them in.
She said she only had it for the purpose of the hearing.
She got it by request because I wouldn't talk to her.
Only for this hearing. That's
no,
what she said.
it's general for more than that.
And I don't think that's correct. My understanding is I pulled it up. I think it's only for
this hearing. That's what she said. She doesn't have it for everything else.
I thought it covered more general, including her ability to file a claim on this matter.
She says no. That's what she testified to.
The power of attorney is completely legitimate.
Ma'am, we're not saying that. You have a limited power of attorney only for this hearing, according to what you told us.
Not just for the hearing, for any matters dealing with my complaint.
For this hearing, right?
Who am I talking to? Right now.
Let me see a copy of the power of attorney. If you have a copy of it, I'm thinking you have a call for production of it. Let me see it. Can you print that out so everybody can? You can't print it out. Okay, just a second.
Do you want me to read it out loud?
It's probably 5 pages.
Why wouldn't you provide it with this if it's 5 pages long?
It's not part of the evidence. It's simply a matter, again, I submitted that to the hearing officer for approval.
If she's going to do it, I mean, she's testifying on behalf of the complainant.
It says that the claims in litigation, in regard to claims in litigation, the principal authorizes the agent to assert and maintain before a court or administrative agency a claim for relief, cause or counterclaim, offset, etc. So that is what she is doing today. But that does not mean that she had the capacity previously to answer a lot of stuff and fill out a lot of other stuff, unless I'm reading it wrong. And of course, I'm having to read this from a cell phone, which is not what I would rather not do that. I would rather have a copy of it.
Is there any way I can have a date?
No, it was not when you talked to her. She did it on my request, because I would not discuss the case with her without that.
I wouldn't either. That's why I'm here.
Well, I know, but your obligation is to Mr. Moore, not to Ms. Rose. And Ms. Rose is the complainant. Mr. Moore has not filed a complaint with this board, technically.
Mr. Moore has filed a complaint via his advocate, who is me. The person I'm speaking to, you were on the board?
Yes, I am on the board. My name is Darlene Jacobs. I've been an auctioneer for about 40 years.
Okay, so you're not representing Mr. Cawthorn?
No, I'm not. I'm on the board. I represent the state of Louisiana.
Everybody you're talking to on this board is on the board.
I'm sorry, what?
You said you've been on the board for 40 years?
No, I've been an auctioneer for about 40 years.
Oh, I see. How long have you been on the board?
What? How many years have I been on the board? 8. It has been 8 years? I didn't realize it was that. That's maybe too long.
I'm not sure that we need to go into who, as long as...
Long enough, ma'am, to be able to ask you these questions, because I'm also an attorney, and I've been an attorney for 47 years, licensed in 3 states, AV rated.
I'd like to go on and ask Mr. Cochran some questions if we can move on. Because some of this is from the complaint, some of this is not from the complaint. Mr. Cochran, you did not supply, you were served with a subpoena, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did you answer all of that subpoena?
Everything that I had, I had.
Okay. What specifically did you not supply? And I can read it out loud if you don't recall.
What's that, ma'am?
I can read it out loud if you don't recall.
I really can't recall all the stuff I turned in. I know I turned in 2 or 3 different packets and stuff. I can't remember exactly.
So let's go through it then if you don't recall. He failed to, one of the allegations in the complaints, he failed to answer a subpoena completely, which is a violation of our rules and regulations.
The only thing I can remember off the top of my head would be the, my brain's just blank. The occupational license in Evangeline Parish. Now, the online auction was held in Allen Parish, and they don't require an occupational license. They don't have an occupational license there. You just sign up and collect taxes for it.
Just wasting time on this.
But we are behind on our sales tax, so I wasn't able to get one, and they're letting me do to catch up.
Let me make sure I'm clear on this. Where is your auction located? Which parish?
My auction businesses don't run out of my house now with parish.
Okay.
My auctions are normally held, except for this online one, in Evangeline Parish at the 3029 Old Highway 13 address.
Okay.
Can I make a motion that we go into executive session at this point?
I'm still presenting part of the complaint, which has nothing to do with Ms. Rose. I would ask you, I'll wait till I complete that.
Is there a particular reason you would like to do that?
I'm going to make that motion.
We need to move forward with this, and we'll go to executive session when you're done.
Let's continue. 2 hours of this.
According to this, and this is what I sent you on May 31st, you did not supply the following answers to the subpoena. Proof of purchase of any items to be sold at auction, settlement sheets, receipts to buyers, real property purchase agreements, documents showing lot numbers, item numbers, etc. And for those following on, it's May 31st, 2018, failure to comply. Records of vehicle titles transferred, including the motor vehicle, such as the Harley and the tractor, sales tax licenses, sales tax records, occupational licenses, applicable license like a firearm dealer license or a motor vehicle sales license. Documents reflecting all items sold and those items which were not sold, everyone that worked at your auction, and any records of any sales of any items consigned for auction but transferred to other parties outside the auction. So, specifically, you did not have these items, is that correct?
No, some of the stuff I've done, because y'all sent me copies of the people that had bought. I'm trying to remember all 3 you just listed. Yeah, I'm not trying to be
So
trusting.
we asked you for buyer's save. You did supply those
Yes,
in
ma'am.
July. And you, let me...
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So you did supply that one item?
Yes.
Okay. After this was
Items
said.
were not described.
You're not being talked to.
With regard to this matter, did you sell items to yourself?
One. Actually, I think my wife bought some others, but I did do one because it was the turning plow that I just could not get a bid on, and I wanted to give him something for it, so I put $100 on me. It was a 2-bladed turning plow, Mr. Moore owned, and tell you how bad I wanted it, I went home and gave it to a preacher friend of mine that plants watermelons. I didn't even keep it.
But you know now that you should
Yes,
not.
I do know that.
And your wife did buy some items?
Yeah, my wife buys way too much, I can tell you right now.
With regard to that matter, we did try to set that off for hearing today, but I did not get a return from Mr. Cochran or notice exactly what the deal was. So we will hold that off for another time. With regard to this, what about sales tax? Did you collect sales tax?
Yes, ma'am, but I am behind on it.
Who are you behind with?
Evangeline Parish.
Are they taking a judgment against you?
I get it tomorrow.
Tomorrow you get your
Yes,
judgment?
ma'am.
Okay.
Hey, I'm honest. I ain't gonna lie to you. I ain't hiding nothing.
Now,
I mean, I don't know the judgment. I got to go for a meeting tomorrow. I don't, yeah.
So I'm going to show you this list of the buyer statements. That's the notice I sent to you of May 31st.
Well, I didn't purchase any items to sell at auction. Is that what that means?
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't purchase nothing like that. Settlement sheets, I sent them. Receipts to buyers, I sent them. Real property purchase agreements, don't really know what that is. Lot numbers and sales, I sent everything I had. Records of vehicles, trial, including bill of sales. Didn't think to keep it, being honest.
Wait, you're saying you did not keep a copy of the titles or vehicles you sold at this
No, ma'am.
auction?
I handed it to them. They had ways of doing it. I didn't think about it, to be honest. I didn't keep copies of that. I know I should have now, but I didn't.
Okay.
No, until that, license to use motor vehicles, I don't have that. They don't have it, all items sold and those which were not sold, yes, I provided that. Individuals employed. I really don't have employees. I got volunteers. Most of the kids just like helping out, and people around there tipping. We're, like I said, we're selling chickens and spoons and forks and pots. We don't have no profession.
Well, you did on this regard, these were some large items in Mr. Moore's auction, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. I have a list of the large ones here.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry.
And you didn't have any paid help for that?
No, ma'am. I do it all myself.
Okay. With regard to, go on, what else did you not supply?
That was all of it. I didn't read this last one. Records of sales of any consigned for auction but transferred to other parties. Items consigned for auction. Don't understand what they're saying.
All right, let's go back to sales tax. Were any of these auctions actually handled in Sabine Parish?
No.
Is that what the house was?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you didn't sell anything from the house?
No, ma'am.
Okay. With regard to the issue of the hide, you collected sales tax from the individuals with regard to this Mr. Moore's sale?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you pay the sales tax over?
Not all of it. I'm working on it.
So you charged buyers at your auction and did not sell it?
Did not sell it.
I'm sorry, did not pay the sales tax?
Not all of it. I'm working on it. Paying a little at a time to catch up.
Okay. Now, you've heard the allegations from Ms. Rose,
Yes, ma'am.
and you know you're on Rose.
Yes, ma'am.
Are any of the allegations correct?
No, I think there may have been some misunderstandings, but ain't none of them correct.
With regard to this matter, did you alter consignment contracts?
There's one part I did when you seen the $100 for hauling.
Right.
I had agreed to Mr. Moore. Usually what I would charge, and that's what was going in my mind for that distance to haul, is $100 per trip.
Right.
I had made an agreement with Mr. Moore for $250. I knew it was going to take about 4 trips, and I agreed to do all of it, the hauling, for $250. That's why the consignment contracts were 3 parts. When I done it, I'd leave him to keep pink copy. When I sent him a check, he got the yellow copy. I kept the white. And I guess, habit, I wrote the $100 in, and when I went to pay it, I scratched it out. He was not charged that $100 for that last part.
But you did charge for cleaning and hauling.
Yes, ma'am. I did discuss that with him, and he agreed to pay the cleaning fees. But I did forget to put it on there and added it after that. I did forget to put that on the original contract, but he did agree to it. The only part I forgot to speak to him about would have been the advertising costs, so I just didn't charge him. I ate all them expenses. Because I did forget to talk to him about that, so I didn't charge him. He was not charged advertising.
Was that in your written contract, all of these expenses that he signed?
Yes, ma'am. Now, the original, when he signed there, the cleaning fees were not in there. And I don't mind if I have to pay that to him. I don't mind. But I had discussed it with him, and he did agree to it. But I did forget to list it on it because I was hot. I was sweating like a big old junkyard dog and ready to hit the road, and I forgot to add that on that. But I did discuss it with him originally.
All right. With regard to the items that are alleged to have not been accounted for.
Yeah, they were. Can I go over this list?
Sure.
Okay, the first one, the attachments, he was a welder, and evidently a very good one at one time. he had homemade some stuff, and it had a couple attachments, but a lot of it was just not stuff anybody wants. The ripper and cultivator, let's see, I had it marked down. There's a couple of pieces I just couldn't get bids on, so what I did is I threw it in with other pieces and sold, like, you got two of them instead of just one. You understand? Like, I think that ripper went with the disc. His disc brought $200. And I've got a page here where I was marking it. Might be lost that paper there.
So you think it did, but you're not sure what that is?
I'm about to show you where I paid him for it.
Well, it doesn't state what the item is on most of the items. I don't know what an implement is, PLA.
You can. While this is going on, no, we have to
Also, one of the items that was scratched out on one of the assignment sheets was for the Cedar Road. That's what you couldn't read. The Cedar Road was also supposed to be sold online with everything else.
Ms. Rose, let him answer.
My ticket writer listed them as implements, some of them. She just didn't know what to call them. That would have been the two I stuck in the other parts right there. We're actually got two per on that one.
Okay, but you did not specifically list that item, for
It
example.
was done as implement. That's what my ticket writer typed in the computer as implement. That's what it was. That's what she typed. That's what that's going to be. It was two of the cheaper ones. I had to throw a couple together to make them sell.
Anything else on there that you threw in with something
Okay, let me
else?
go through. No, I don't think. Harley Davidson windshields, I never heard of it. He had one on it. It had a very, it had a very derogatory Hillary Clinton sticker on it, and he made me promise it would stay on there when it sold. When I sold it, it was still on there. That's one thing. He was adamant. It said, livestock, don't vote for one. Had a picture of that. And I remember asking him, because, it's in the pictures on the price. He made me promise that was important. Never heard nothing about an extra windshield brackets. Never heard nothing about it. The welder, I remember having a conversation with him, because this homemade trailer that's in there was extremely well built. I don't know why I put light axles under it, but it was the heaviest built little trailer I've ever seen. But it was homemade. And I remember asking him, I said, well, where's the welder, that welding machine and cutting torches? He said, oh, I done sold him. That wasn't there. The welder and cutting torches. Circular saw, pretty much they figuring about the steel saw. I have a little different. We call things a little different. They do up there. That was all listed under the tools. Jigsaw, lawnmower. Don't remember lawnmower. Never seen a lawnmower. Air tools, that was under the tools. The router table, that was the router and the table. Electric drill, carpet cleaner, electric carpet cleaner. That was a vacuum cleaner. It brought $3. It's listed in there. Large tarps, never seen no real big tarps. The wood chipper is actually on, I seen it, it's listed as a limb chipper or limb shredder is what I think, I seen my ticket writer had listed it as. Yes, right here. Item 68, that'd be Exhibit 6A. Is listed as a limb chopper. It's over $60.
Well, that was for the pole saw.
And
the pole saw.
Wood chipper.
Ms. Rose, let him finish.
20-foot logging chains. They went in box of tools. I don't remember exactly. I think they went in a box of tools. We decided to sell some stuff, but a box just wasn't. Some stuff not everybody wants. Cable binders, don't remember them. Large wood clamps, don't remember them. 4-foot levels, battery charger, I can't remember none of them. Heavy grinder, that's sold. It's enlisted in the wood. It's in with the tools. Rods and reels, it's all in there. Mason jars, that's a misunderstanding. She says it has 50 mason jars. We sold 13 boxes of mason jars. And let me find them. Okay, it's listed on Exhibit 6. And it's, in order for it to be thinking I was selling single jars, it'd be like I was getting $4 per jar, and I'm not that good. I ain't gonna lie to nobody. And because that was boxes of mason jars I was selling. So he did have a bunch of them. And we put them in several boxes and we're selling mason jars by the box. is what that mason jars thing was. Everything, I didn't keep nothing from Mr. Moore's. Everything he got paid for, I hauled out of there. Some of the stuff I had to pile in a box to get $2 bid for, but everything was sold.
Let me ask you this. Did you make an inventory prior to the sale of items to be sold?
Of the important stuff. I wasn't listing every fork, knife, little bitty pot, stuff like that. He didn't have a lot. There was a lot of low, real small stuff, but nothing high-end. The high-end stuff, I made a list. Of the bigger stuff, there wasn't a whole lot.
We do have a question with regard to the sale of some of the title items.
Okay.
Your statement is that you did not keep a copy of the title?
No.
Did you have a title to transfer?
Everything had a title, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And who executed the transfer?
Well, the Harley-Davidson motorcycle was actually, as soon as the auction's over, I got a list of the buyers, and my parents is listed as the Harley-Davidson motorcycle. Well, my dad is 70-something years old, can't hardly move around. So I called him, I said, what the heck's going on? He said, oh, my buddy down the road works for the Sheriff's Department, don't have internet, he wanted me to bid on it for him. It went to a man named Mr. Collins that works for St. Landry Sheriff's Department. If I'm not mistaken, that's the Sheriff's Department.
Okay, so
he came the next day and said, I haven't borrowed cash and paid for it. Said, I have a notary public can do it, I don't need to worry about it. So I'll put a motorcycle.
Okay. What about the other title items?
The trailer was bought by my dad, and that was all I sold for Mr. Moore. Those two titled items.
Okay. And your dad bought it from you?
He bought it from my auction.
Okay. And was he present at the auction?
That was online.
That was only online?
Yes, ma'am, that was online.
Did you know at the time that he was...
I wasn't even home when it ended. Oh, I'm sorry.
Let me finish the question. Did you know at the time that your father was bidding?
I wasn't sure. He talked about he was interested in it, but I wasn't sure he was bidding on it.
Did you have any other bids on it?
Yeah, because everything started like a penny. It went to, top of my head, I think 800 or something.
It's on there. We have too many pieces of paper.
I had a lot of bids on it, and to be honest, I wasn't even supposed to have the trailer at first. The reason it wasn't on the first consignment sheet, because Mr. Moore said, asked me what I thought he could get for it. I said, somewhere probably between $600 and $1,200. And he said, well, I got a buddy of mine to give me $2,500 for it. I said, you might want to sell it to that buddy of yours, because it's never going to bring that at auction. Like I said, not knocking, well-built trailer, just it's homemade. Not a lot of people beating doors down to grab it. And I got back the next day, and he called me up, and he said, look, I'm going to go ahead and let that trailer sell. The guy didn't want it. That's what I figured you'd get that for. And they brought 800, and off the top of my head, I remember exactly. I could find it. It's in here. My eyes back on.
I think I saw it for $850.
Yeah, 850.
Mr. Cochran, didn't you use the trailer to haul
Miss Rose,
stuff?
you're going to need to, Miss Rose, it's not your turn right now.
Okay. With regard to the other allegations contained in the complaint, do you have any other comments with regard to those allegations?
I got a list here. Is that what?
Well, he has a right to testify if the board will allow him to do so.
He's going on trial, he's got a right to defend himself.
Okay, first off, the negotiations, where I met Mr. Moore, I got a friend of mine named Derek Perry. He is now, but at the time he wasn't a licensed auctioneer. He was approached to handle this by Mr. Moore. From what I understand, some other auctioneers had turned him down. Because from what I hear, he was wanting too much stuff for his stuff. So I told Derek, a friend of mine, at the time he only had an auction house license. So I went and talked. I called Mr. Moore. He gave me his number. I called him. He said, we set up a meeting. I came and met with him. And I told him, I said, look, first off, Pump Station Road, if you go look at it, you turn off, it's 4 miles probably before you get to this house, 3 or 4 miles. And I'm telling you right now, it's the roughest road I've ever seen in my life. And it just was going to be problems getting someone to that house for a live auction. It was bad. I mean, it really was. And he was wanting to be gone like the first week of March. And we're sitting at the 3rd week of July at the time. And I told him, I said, if I'd done one on your property, which you had plenty of room for parking, everything else was checked out. And I told Mr. Moore, I said, if I do one on your property, hardly anybody's not going to show up, and you're going to be giving this stuff away. God's honest truth. plain and simple. I said, it'll be gave away. I mean, you're not going to be able to get nothing parked because hardly anybody's going to come down here because I don't have time to advertise it, and it's just not a good location with that bad road way out in the woods. And I told him I would haul it to my place and do the online for parts of it, and on site, on my site, auction for the small stuff. Because, I mean, they tried to say I was going to do everything online. You can't do that little stuff online. And I would haul it because he said, I don't have the capability of doing all this. I said, we'll take care of it. We discussed expenses. And that's how we ended up coming. And then I told him, I said, the only way I'm willing to do this, if I'm doing all the hauling, you're going to be in Illinois, you can't come back. It has to be absolute only. The only way I'm willing to touch it. I don't even take reserves at my place in my move. They have a right to PO it over there if they want to, but I do not take reserves. But I told him the only way I'd load it on a trailer and haul it away from here and sell it for him, it had to be absolute only. And he agreed to it. That was online and solved. The tractor, I don't know why I was thinking it was a 49. It was in good shape, but it was primered. Running shape, run great. Didn't look worth a flip. It was just primered. It wasn't painted. It was just a primer job. There's not a lot of people want. It was a 9-in Ford with a high speed, that's it, no low speed. Just not a lot of people want them tractors. They're not real popular. It's not a collector type tractor. They like the 8-ins and some of the other ones. Jubilee's a little more. I keep saying I've done something with an estate. It wasn't an estate. Mr. Moore was still alive. Him and his wife had got divorced. It's not like someone died here. I couldn't call it an estate, so I didn't. I did tell some people it would be like a living estate. The motorcycle, it's 2005, top of my head, Harley Davidson 1200 Sportster. It was the model that they had, what we call, because I'm a little bit of a motorcycle enthusiast, we call it the Honda tank on it. They rounded them off for a few years, made them really ugly. They're not popular, not many people want them. The only people you usually see riding them is females, and there's very few, and they're usually learning how to ride and hoping to get on something later. Shocked a 65-year-old, 70-year-old man who actually bought that bike. He rode it for 1 week and went and bought him something else. Hated it. If you look, that's about what they sell for. $2,500 through the internet. I can buy them all day long. Before I leave out of Baton Rouge, I could probably find you 4 of them. The difference in the hauling, like I done explained that. I had made a mistake when I wrote that $100. I had agreed $250 for all of it, and when I wrote the second deal, just wrote the $100. And after that, I realized I'd made a mistake, scratched out the $100. He was not charged. The inventory list, I just wasn't writing down 20 pots, 20 forks. You know, the little stuff didn't get listed. Okay, went over that. Used. Okay, went over that. That's why I'm moving him the key. I agreed to, Mr. Moore asked about the payment. I wasn't going to make Mr. Moore wait until I sold everything to pay him a check. That's why I got 4 checks. What I told him is, as I sell your stuff, I'm going to send you a check. I knew nobody else was willing to help this man. He had no one willing to help him sell this stuff. And to be honest with you, I'm literally helping anybody now. I've done it at a cheaper commission than normal after all this. But I told him, I said, Mr. Moore, you're moving to Illinois. I know you're going to have some expense problems doing all this. Because he told me he was up against it. I delivered the first check by hand before he ever left. When I sold the first up, I never had an auction for Mr. Moore. We have a lot of sellers that it was put into each auction through there. I said, I'm going to sell the first load for you real quick, bring your check. As everything sells, I'm going to pay you a check at that point. And that's what I did. I told him I would not pull the expenses or hauling or the expenses for cleaning until the very last check. That way, because I knew that was going to be the biggest one after he collected off our online stuff. I said, that way you have money for your moving expenses and everything. That's exactly what I did. That's why, if you'll notice, the last one, that's when I wrote in the totals on the settlement sheet. That's where all that was wrote in. The very last check, the biggest one, was when I charged him. And the way this all started, I was asked to give a copy of all this stuff. And I said, I can't just give someone's information out just because you called my cell phone. And I asked if she had power of attorney. Now I think about it, I came here and she said yes. I said, you have to have power of attorney. If you have that, or get Mr. Moore to give me permission to give you this, I can give you that information with his permission.
Well, let me ask you this. Did Mr. Moore ever contact you with
Yes. 2 weeks before that, before me and her had that conversation, I spoke to Mr. Moore on the phone. He didn't have no problems hearing me. I know he was a little hard of hearing, but he could still talk on the phone. When I talked to her, which was a week before the online auction ended, the online auction was still going on. I told her, I talked to Mr. Moore, it was a week or two before, and he could talk to me. She said, well, it ain't nowhere near what Mr. Moore wants for that stuff. I said, ma'am, most of your online bids come in at the last minute, which is anybody's ever done an online auction, that's usually the last few minutes, that's when most of it comes in. And I told her, I said, ma'am, listen, if it's a problem and Mr. Moore does not want to sell his stuff, you tell him he can call me. I will give contact proxy bid and I'll have every bit of his stuff pulled off that online auction. He will have to come get it. I'm not driving to Illinois. I'm not doing it. And she said, no, we're not doing that. It's going to sell.
Not true.
That's God's honest.
He's not here, so.
Okay. All right. With regard, how many actual auctions were there?
Really?
Four,
Gone for another hour and a half,
auctions with his items in.
Right?
Okay. And did you pay him on all 4 auctions?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Okay. Now, with regard, you did deduct some expenses,
The last check is where I took out all my expenses.
and did you agree to those expenses in writing?
I did. He did not have it on the cleaning part, on writing on that. I did forget to add it on the part that he signed. I did write it down when I sent him the settlement sheet, which was a yellow copy. But I did forget to add it when he had signed it. I did forget to add it. He had agreed to it, but I did forget to add it on there.
Does the board have any questions?
I'm through, I don't have anything.
I had asked to go into executive session, but apparently you didn't vote on it. So, the question I have. Okay.
Ms. Rose, do you have any questions?
Yes, I do. He said that, I said that when I called him before the auction ended, the only solution he offered was that Mr. Moore could bid on the items if he didn't think they were high enough. Nothing about calling it off.
Is that a question?
I can make it a question.
Okay. Is that correct, Mr. Falcon, what she said?
No. I told him I could get it taken out. If it was that big a deal, I would take every bit of the stuff out of the auction. But Mr. Moore had to give me that permission to do it. She could not. And she said, he can't even talk on the phone. I said, I spoke to him a week or two ago on the phone. And to be honest, and that's where I wanted to apologize earlier, because the more I thought about it could have been Mr. Moore lying to her and her believing him talking to me. Because she said, no, he's not capable of talking on the phone, and I actually called her a liar on the phone. I did shouldn't have, and I wanted to apologize for that, but...
Ms. Rose, do you have any other questions?
I have some statements like he just did.
That's up to the board. You all know?
Nope, questions only.
Questions only.
You shouldn't believe anything he says. He's proven to be a liar and misleading, as he did Mr. Moore.
All right, that's not a question, Ms. Rose.
Okay, let me rephrase that. Did he lie ever during this whole procedure? Did he say?
Yes, ma'am, I lied one time since I've been in here when I...
Wait. He's in the middle of
I don't mind saying this one. I did lie one time when I said I was sorry for calling you a liar.
All right. That's enough.
Y'all want honesty? Hey, I'm full of honesty.
Let me say this. Some of these allegations against Mr. Cochran have not been disputed by Mr. Cochran. As a matter. Administrative matters had nothing to do with the original complaint.
Ms. Stat, just before we get to the motion, what are you asking for the board to do today?
I'm asking, number one, to penalize Mr. Cochran for auctioning without a license and also for not having an escrow account as required by the statute. For failing to comply with the subpoena issued to him with regard to this in full, he did send in the buyer statements, but not until 3 months after they were due. That is part of your packet. With regard to the complaint filed with Mr. Moore, I provide you with a statement by Mr. Moore, which under the Administrative Procedure Act can be taken as evidence in this matter. With regard to his response, I think you should take that into consideration also. with regard to that. The complaint does ask for the right to buy on the bond for certain items. And I think Mr. Kaufman has admitted today that he did add some expenses to the consignment. They deducted that probably he shouldn't have done it because he didn't have consent in writing to do so. Of course, with regard to a statement that a judgment will be taken against him for sales tax, I'll add to this fact that if you have a judgment for sales tax taken against you, the statute provides that is another disciplinary action. So just be aware of that with regard to your license.
I'd like to make a motion once again that we go into executive session.
I second. Roll call.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Ms. Jacobs?
Yes.
Mr. Lockett?
Yes.
Mr. Sims?
Yes.
Mr. Warren?
Yep.
Okay, we are in executive session, so Ms. Rose, what that means is we're going to be muting the phone and you will not hear anything until the board returns to session.
She cut slam off.
Off the record,